There is something wrong with the articles in this newspaper. The Marquis de Manette died in the carriage, and it is not at all clear whether it was an accident or murder. On Monday, Graf passed away due to an accident, and on Tuesday, an officer died due to a fall. At first glance, there are too many absurd coincidences. A cruise ship sank Wednesday, killing its navigator. And on Thursday, the young man went to a tea party. There was too much negative information in the newspaper. Subsequently, news of people's deaths was reported until Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is the 7th death this week. It was clear to everyone that something strange was happening. At that moment, a girl with blonde hair was holding a newspaper in her hands. She was dressed in a green dress, and an emerald pendant hung on her chest. The woman thought for a minute because she didn't do anything. She was a little worried and upset, as if all these troubles were because of her. There were times when the empire was threatened by a demon unable to live with any living creature. His enormous power could level the entire world. A girl with pink hair and white wings screamed to stop. After all, knights on horseback were approaching her. Then the saint appeared, who was able to communicate with the demon. She could calm him down and smooth out the situation. She saves the empire and meets the love of her life, but not everything is that simple. Her future is darkened by a villain. She did her best to prevent this girl's happiness. The villainess was very cunning and insidious. The villainess's name was Thisbe Louise Callisto. The villainess screamed that everything she took belonged only to her. The girl was very angry and did not want to give up hers. Thisbe decided that the saint had stolen her place. She was offended to the core. She was obsessed with absurd illusions. She tormented her in every possible way. But each time the saint found a wise solution to overcome the danger. She was very wise and therefore she almost always succeeded. The girl was great with herself. She had long, gorgeous pink hair. The villain believed that she was in danger, and she really wanted the saint to disappear somewhere. So she ran around the castle and thought about how she could accomplish this. And one fine day, a brilliant idea came to the villainess's head. If this imposter disappears, then she can become a true saint again. All that remains is to figure out a way to do this. However, her latest evil plan was thwarted, and the villain Louise was sentenced to death. And now she was already standing near the executioners. A knife was raised from above. The girl's hands were tied, and everyone around was waving their hands. And she was executed right in front of the whole people, in kind, graceful colors, and happily lived a life with her beloved, where there was no place. They loved each other very much and were happy. Now no one could interfere with their happiness. This story is called The Flower That Tames Monsters. In short, this flower is a monster. 24 years ago, she was a university student living a normal life in South Korea, but while walking home, she was hit by a car. When she woke up, she saw car headlights and a license plate in front of her. She was asked the question, "This is Thisbe," and the girl replied that yes, Her Excellency. And she was not in a hospital, but in a cradle. It was very strange. A man stood in front of her and said that she looked exactly like her mother. It would certainly be better if she looked like her father. And the girl looked at these people with surprised eyes and did not understand what kind of people they were. At first, she thought she was sleeping. Well, then they could do it on the sides and realized that she was in the cradle. And she is not a grown girl, but a baby. When he was still alive, she had no feelings for him. The father agreed because he was his son. The man said that when he spends time with his granddaughter, he constantly thinks about how terrible she is. It was too real to be a dream. The girl extended her tiny hand to the rattle. And at that moment, the girl realized that she had truly been reborn. And now she turned out to be a fairly rich family. After all, the toys were made of pure gold and decorated with a variety of expensive stones. The girl lay there and thought what she should do now. She only heard that her parents died immediately after her birth. Is it really possible that she has a bad streak in her life here too? However, the master and his wife left behind the oracle's child. The girl was surprised whether she was the oracle's child. The girl also heard that she was born to save empires. Of course, she didn't understand what they were talking about. And also people said that she should glorify the name of the Callisto family so that it would shine forever. A girl born into the Callisto family this year will save the empire from danger. Waking up in an unfamiliar world, she was confused for a moment, but then realized that she had been reincarnated as a special creature who had received protection. Because of this, she was forced to grow as a saint and savior of the empire. And it all started with fencing lessons. Perhaps she didn't really like this activity, but there was no other choice. Next came the study of official foreign and noble languages, and also much more. The teachers told the girls not to rush. After all, she should be graceful in everything. And the girl wondered if they wanted too much from her. She thought that they would love her only because she eats well, but it turns out everything is much more serious. The woman told her that she should concentrate. She was sure that they were trying to raise her to be like her grandfather, but such treatment was too cruel. She curtsied, lifted her dress, and positioned her feet correctly. The teachers applauded and praised her, but there was no happiness on the girl's face at all. After several years of living in this world, she realized a lot. Everything seemed quite familiar to her, as if she had already seen it somewhere. And at one fine moment, the girl remembered. Is she really a flower of a monster in the world of the novel? Was she really transported into this particular novel, which she knew and read well? This can't be true. She turns out to be the villain from the book. And now 6 years have passed since the girl was reborn. If the plot of the book goes on as usual, then she is sure that she will definitely be executed. And why did this happen to her? Now she has the power to change the course of history. She may do this to survive. To do this, you need to come up with certain tactics of behavior. Only then did she realize that she was in a novel. The girl didn't understand why the hell she was trying all this time. Is it really because of this worthless patronage? It wasn't entirely wrong. It just affected distant relationships. After all, the real saint was Estelle Iller, born into a side branch of the Callisto family. She is the main character of the novel. It was a girl with red hair and golden eyes. She was very comfortable with herself and was cheerful and cheerful. There was a knock on the door. The doors opened and a maid appeared in the doorway. She told the lady that her carriage was ready. The girl asked how much time she had left before her appointment. The maid said there was still plenty of time, and the girl asked me to tell him to wait, and she will come down now. The maids had already finished getting ready and were ready to let the girl go to the meeting. But when the memories of her past life returned to her, she was simply exhausted. How is it possible that the child of the oracle has been in a hopeless situation since childhood? Is it really only because this child is the favorite of the gods? The girl thought that she would go crazy if she did not have memories of her previous life. And since these memories were still with her, she could act smartly. The girl remembered that Thisbe in the novel The Flower of Monsters did not mock Estelle from the very beginning. People called her a bastard too. Ultimately, her heart could not stand it, and Thisbe stooped to such cruel acts. And now the girl was ready to go down to the first floor. The maid put on the last piece of jewelry. The girl looked like a sea princess in this dress. But it's just the villain from the book, not her. The girl told the man accompanying her that on the way they would stop at her favorite cafe. At that moment, the woman handed her a newspaper. The girl Mila thanked the maid, and she was very impatient to read the news. If it weren't for her situation, she would be much more grateful. And now the girl already got into the carriage and ordered that they could go. She decided for herself once and for all that she would live her own life and not someone else's. She will not repeat the mistakes of that girl. After all, she endured so much for this. Whatever the nobles do to her, and whatever rumors they spread, they need to extract as much benefit from them as possible. The girl was sure that everything would be successful. A person himself is the architect of his own happiness, so she was going to fulfill her duties properly and not fall into trouble. And then, everything will be fine for her. The girl laughed cheerfully. She decided that once the hard work was completed, the path to freedom would open. And she didn't say these thoughts early. That's what she thought at that moment. Until she noticed that the people who were supposed to die at her hands suddenly died. She read it in the newspaper. Online, who mocked Thisbe. And the girl could not understand. Why did they continue to die under mysterious circumstances? She didn't kill them like in her previous life. The girl did not understand one thing where she could have made a mistake. The carefree life she dreamed of simply burst like glass. The girl exhaled heavily. It collapsed in 1 second, and it was incredibly difficult. The girl kept repeating to herself the same question. Where did she go wrong? She needed to think carefully. After thinking a little, she understood. She tried to behave properly, so everything turned out quite well. Recently, it turned out that Estelle is a true saint. A month ago, the plot of the novel Monster Flower finally began its course. Many nobles gathered at the imperial hunt. And at that moment, a demon appeared. Everyone was stunned and scared. They screamed for someone to save them. Suddenly, a monster appeared in front of everyone. Of course, as it was written in the book, Estelle tamed the ferocious beast. Just 5 minutes ago, the raging white wolf tried to destroy everyone. And now, from the girl's touch, he closed his face and closed his eyes. He was completely calm. After the girl tamed him, she asked if anyone was hurt. It was at this moment that the main character appeared. She asked the monster if he was really frightened by the sudden commotion on the lake. Now that he has calmed down, everything will be fine. Nobody believed their eyes. All the people were simply stunned. How can you so quickly and easily tame a monster that only a squad of elite knights can defeat? And it's still a question of whether they will defeat him or not. And here such a fragile girl coped with everything perfectly. Isn't the Oracle's child Princess Callisto? Was she really lying and pretending to be a saint all the time? If you think about it, Princess Callisto and Lady Iller are the same age, and they were almost sure that the Oracle was talking about her as a saint. All the people didn't know if the princess once had such power. Everyone was wondering what would happen to her now. And the girl with the blonde hair stood and just silently watched what was happening. She knew something like this would happen someday. She understood everything perfectly, but everything she experienced as a saint was in vain. And she only now realized this. Perhaps this is why Thisbe is original, wanting to be recognized somehow, but she has no desire to fall face down in the dirt. She will try to justify herself somehow. This is no longer necessary because everyone has seen what Lady Estelle is capable of. Yes, and now who will listen to the false saint? At that moment, the girl approached Estelle and called out to her. Well, at that moment, I was standing next to the already calm monster. The girl said it was very surprising. She came up and took the girl's hands in hers and looked at them carefully. The girl said that thanks to her, they all survived. The girl also said that Estelle has a very unusual ability. And the blonde girl said that it was possible that she was the virgin from the prophecy. Everyone was very surprised by the girl's behavior. Everyone thought that the girl would be simply furious that the princess gave in so easily. She said it was a lot more noisy than she expected. It's better to leave beautifully than to show yourself to be a liar. At that moment, the girl quickly let go of her hands and said that now she needs to leave her. She deflected and asked for forgiveness. And the girl decided that it was perfect. It was just a superb finale. That's what she thought. Obviously, until today, everything was calm. And now that she has renounced the title of saint, she continues to live her life. But people who are negatively disposed towards her die. She could very easily be accused of murder, and her happy and comfortable life may end. What happened? Why does this happen, and how to stop it? At this time, someone asked the girl what she was talking about. The girl immediately made surprised eyes. Apparently, she said some of her thoughts out loud. She was a little awkward. After all, she was so carried away by reading the newspaper that she completely forgot that one of the men was sitting at the table with her. The man told Lady Thisbe that he would help in any way he could. She has any problems or worries, the man asked her to tell him, and he is ready to fight them. This man's name was Sor Almond Salvatore, and he was Thisbe's fiance and the villain of the novel The Flower of the Monster. The girl quickly shook her head. She told him that nothing happened and everything was fine. From one glance at his face, one could tell that he was very worried. At that moment, the girl quickly slammed the newspaper shut. She said she was too focused on the paper and was bringing her own changes. This was a man who was stupidly gentle and saw only the good in people. He said girls don't have to apologize. After all, they often read the newspaper during tea time. The young man was sweet and kind. Even in the original, Sora felt love towards her. The man said that everything was fine and asked her to enjoy her vacation. And the man had red hair and sky blue eyes. He was a pathetic man who supported Thisbe until the very end, and then simply died tragically. In the original story, after Estelle was revealed to be a true saint, Thisbe hatched a plan to kill her. Will Estelle carry the torch this time? No way. She couldn't allow this to happen, to have what belonged to her taken away from her like that. The girl said to Sora that she would not be able to bear that Estelle would stand instead of her on the signal tower of the jumper. The girl asked the boy to simply make sure that she was ill until the end of the founding festival. And she asked the young man to mix this medicine into Estelle's cup. And the girl handed the young man a bottle of red liquid. The weak-willed litter could not ignore Thisbe's plea. However, trusting her and giving her medicine was against his morals, so Sora tried it himself first. Surprisingly, Thisbe's words turned out to be true. He was sick for only 3 days and then immediately recovered. And the man realized that she had no malicious intent towards the girl. After that, he believed her and poured medicine into the saint's cup. As a result, Estelle drank the mixture, which turned into poison after mixing with black tea. And the girl fell to the floor unconscious. Ultimately, Sora was arrested for a crime against the saint, and Estelle fell into a deep sleep. Even after he learned that he had been deceived, he continued to defend Thisbe until the very end. When she read the book, she wondered, how could such a fool exist in the world? The girl was very, very annoying. The man was sweet, innocent, and even responsible. And as a bonus, a beautiful face. And the girl asked for forgiveness for her past self, but that she considered him stupid and knew nothing. However, this was the first time she had seen him react like this while reading the newspaper. The young man asked the girl if he could ask what article in the newspaper upset her so much. It's hard to see her suffer alone. It was simply incredible. If he is not an angel, then who is this young man who sits in front of her? The young man sat opposite the girl with his arms crossed. He looked Thisbe closely in the eyes. The girl said it didn't matter. She couldn't believe that there was such a good and pure person in this world. How did it happen that this particular person is her fiance? She was incredibly lucky, and before she didn't even realize it. The girl quickly put the newspaper on the table, and she pointed her finger at one of the articles and said that it was all because of the article she was pointing at. The young man quickly picked up the newspaper and began to read that the Marquis de Manette died in a car accident. Judging by what was written in the article, it was an accident. The accident occurred because a carriage wheel fell off, but there is something strange about it. It says here that the Marquis's carriage was made just a week ago, and it's very strange that such a breakdown occurred in the new carriage. Everything was right. The thought creeped in that someone could have deliberately set up the accident. Everyone agrees that it was not an accident, but something else. And all the people thought that it was she who caused this tragic accident. All people believe that she is to blame, since all the victims had contact with her. It's a very lighthearted article. The girl said that at first glance it looks like a simple coincidence. Even if it were her, in any case, the victim would start first. And how much talk there was about the fact that she is the child of an oracle and a saint. Did it all turn out to be a lie in the end? People talked behind their backs that she also goes to the opera with her fiancé. What is important is that she is not ashamed at all. The girl held him tightly and asked him to just go. Do not react to evil, caustic words and let their sweet ears pass by. As a result, the lady who scolded her in the salon, as well as the Marquis de Monet who attacked her in the theater, died. And this was not a coincidence. Thisbe thought that it looked like she wouldn't be able to be happy. And all because she was suddenly accused of murder. Even so, thanks to talking to the litter, she relaxed a little. She felt light and free being next to him. After it was revealed that Estelle was the truth of the saint, Thisbe was left completely alone. People could greet her, but nothing more. She was uncomfortable in many ways. As soon as Sora saw the article, he immediately believed in Thisbe's innocence, and she really appreciated it. The girl told her fiancé that everything was fine. She's innocent after all. The girl also added that the truth would definitely come out soon, so she asked the young man to relax. Sora understood everything, but still, he was very worried that she was suffering all kinds of humiliation. It was unpleasant for him, and he wanted to somehow help his bride. The girl looked into the eyes of the boys and gasped. It was illegal to make eyes like that at him. At this moment, the young man blushed. He wanted to say something but stopped. Thisbe came closer to her fiancé and stroked his cheek. She tried to reassure him that she was fine. It doesn't matter to her. The young man said that she always says that everything is fine, but he was afraid that this was far from true, and the young man took the girl's hand in his own. The girl also understood everything, and she was very grateful to the young man for his concern. She appreciated it, but it was really true. Nina didn't understand why the girl was so calm, and she tried to explain that it was all because she was going to catch the criminal with her own hands. Then all charges against her will be dropped, and she will feel free. She plans to catch the criminal who did this. But there was another reason why she had to catch the criminal. After all, this becomes an obstacle to her great goal. People she didn't kill die, and she is suspected of killing them. In this reality that has evolved, according to the original story, she only came to one conclusion. There is no answer here, and you need to run. She needed to think about escaping first, without even trying to resist it. It might seem like an extreme attempt, but it was the best decision given the reality. A few days ago, the girl was lying in her bed and trying to sleep. But sleep never came to her because her head was swarming with 1,000 thoughts. First, the book is too harsh on the villainess, that is, Thisbe. Unlike Thisbe from the book, who did various evil deeds, she obediently handed over the title of saint to Estelle. She thought that by doing this, she would show that she knew her place, and at least she would not be shaken in her presence. However, the result was more blatant and harsh rejection. Unlike Thisbe in the original, who had a lot of anger, she seemed more good-natured and funny. She did not interpret it in her own way and did not threaten to kill everyone if she did not treat her like a saint. She ran and stuck out her tongue. People were surprised. The fake saint was completely mad. The girl didn't understand why everyone blamed and hated only her for everything. Why are they treating her like this? Second, if she continues to be called a murderer, her long-term plan will be disrupted. Looking at the current situation, we can say that she will soon be kicked out of the family. After all, the successor, who was considered a saint, actually turned out to be a fake. There are also rumors that she is a murderer. The Calix family values honor and will never leave it behind. They'll probably try to marry her off to Sora as quickly as possible. If this happens, unlike the original, lives may be saved, but that's all. Obviously, I will be locked in my own home for the rest of my life. Besides, what did Sora sin? Initially, the engagement was the work of the elders of the Duke Salvatore Company. She didn't want Sora to have to deal with everything that came after those decisions. And the girl wondered if there was a place where she could fully demonstrate her accumulated abilities and live a free life. The girl thought for a while and remembered her lessons, and then she remembered one place on the map. And you suddenly shuddered at that thought. Yes, there really is such a place. And this place is Magic Kingdom She's, a small country sandwiched between 3 internal powers. A country that is more like a huge city than a country. Only a few who can use magic are accepted into this country. This place is known for accepting almost no one except this minority. No one believed it, considering it a lie, but Thisbe was really able to use her powers. Of course, her power was magical, and not divine at all. Holy and magic power have the same root as both use mana. Depending on the nature of mana, it can move across more owners. The only difference is that it is used according to a magical method. However, very few people can use mana. Moreover, ordinary people on this continent had almost no knowledge of magic or divine powers. They simply could not and did not know how to use it. Therefore, Thisbe uses magical power in the novel, which she quite accidentally showed in herself. And people believe that this is precisely a manifestation of divine power, because Thisbe is a saint. This must have made it even harder for her to believe that she wasn't a saint. But thanks to this, she also gained something. And the girl clenched her fist forcefully. In the book, Thisbe mistook her power for divine power and continued the secret training on her own. And eventually she learned to handle magical power as if it were divine power. Although in the book she abuses her powers, tormenting Estelle. And she dies without even recognizing her true abilities. Now she knew what abilities she had. She also knew how valuable they were. Until now, she had been refining her magical power according to the contents of the book. She constantly reread the book and practiced. With such abilities, She's will welcome her with open arms. A person who finds himself in She's finds himself cut off from the outside world, and existing statuses and relationships become non-working in this country. Being stoned by the Empire. What could be the best conditions for her? The one who is about to be kicked out of the family. It was a really good plan. And that's how she found a solution that was perfect for her situation. I would never have thought that she would be unfairly denied entry into the country because one condition was not met. In the excitement of thinking about the plan, she forgot one thing. The last point of entry into the She's. All asylum seekers must be cleared of criminal charges. But her plan to claim asylum could not be allowed to fall apart because she was accused of a murder she did not commit. Calm, you just need to calm down, looking at the handsome face of your groom. She will catch the culprit with her own hands no matter what. Are they really going to catch the criminal? If there is a criminal, catching him will be a very dangerous task. Thisbe asked her fiance if he was really worried about her. The man blushed a little and said that she was right. The girl thought that this young man was a real good-natured man. The girl asked the young man not to worry about it. After all, she is quite good at fencing. Sora said no matter how good her swordsmanship is, she can still get injured. The girl thought about it and said that she was not going to look for him alone. Many will help him. After all, it still belongs to the Duke's family. The girl said during their last meeting that she did not think that they would all be on her side. The girl was a little taken aback. Did she really say something like that? And she leaned on her hands. Since the young man usually just listens silently, she thought that he might have missed something. But he has a surprisingly good memory. She thought about it and didn't know how she should justify herself in this case. Perhaps the deaths of these people really are an accident. It was unknown about one death every 2 days. Well, the fact that one person died every day will definitely arouse suspicion. Therefore, the girl did not undertake to criticize this article, considering it false. Either she wasn't a party involved, that certainly wouldn't be suspicious. She is so sweet and kind. This is not entirely true. In fact, she hoped that this newspaper publishing house would go bankrupt. The girl quickly crumpled the newspaper into a ball and threw it on the floor, and yet she heard that this publishing house had a lot of debts. So, even without their intervention, he will have big problems. It wouldn't even be surprising if news of his bankruptcy appears in a few days. The girl screamed, "Is this really true? Is it really the books that were so bad with the publishing house?" In fact, this publisher was the one who harshly and unvarnishedly reported the atrocities of Thisbe in the original work. The story said that Thisbe's actions contributed to the destruction of this institution, and now it turns out that the publishing house literally has a mountain of debt. She both hated the publishing house and was upset that she could not punish him, so this situation made her relatively happy. She seemed to really like this news. After all, the girl became very joyful. Naturally, this is news to her. She was very happy. And she would be even more pleased with their complete and hopeless collapse. The young man smiled happily and said, "Okay. You can do everything as she wishes. Well, all that remains is to catch the culprit." It seems that she really plans to find the culprit, and this upset the young man a little. Well, the girl was confident in herself and never threw words to the wind. And the girl knew that the young man was very worried about her, but she simply must drop the false accusations. And above all, the influential person has not been killed yet, but perhaps he will be killed soon. This is actually the biggest problem. According to the queue at the moment, the next will be the son of Mark Count Lunnet, the young Margrave of Lunnet. He tried to seduce her, but he failed, and because of his inferiority complex towards Sora, he became one of those who tried to get her out every time they met. The problem was not in the young Mark Count Lunnet after all. All the troubles began after the Count turned his back on her. Count Lunnet, leader among the Margraves fighting monsters on the border. His influence is truly enormous, and this becomes the most decisive reason the Calyx family abandons Thisbe, after which she dies. If young Lunnet dies in such a situation, Count Lunnet will be able to identify the culprit. If this happens, the girl will simply be driven into a corner. This means that her previous deaths did not make her happy at all. To be honest, they did their thing. She felt somehow at ease inside. The young man asked if he could find out what the problem was. The problem was that the same arrow came back to her. Everyone considers her the culprit of these murders. It just confuses her. He thought that everyone would naturally assume that this had nothing to do with her. Most likely, daily deaths give rise to such suspicions. And the key word here is daily. The problem was that deaths were repeated every day. Of course, daily deaths raise suspicions. After all, accidental deaths usually do not happen every day, but only from time to time. Then they would have nothing to do with her. This means that she will be happy if their deaths have nothing to do with them. Will it really be easier for her then? The girl thought about it. Why is he suddenly asking her such a thing? The young man raised his cup of tea and took a sip. He will take note of this. Although she understood that he was going to take note, she didn't care much because she hadn't seen him so happy for a long time. And the girl, Milo, smiled. The young man put his hand to his heart and said that he was still worried about her. Therefore, He will help her catch the culprit at all costs. The girl realized he took note to help her. At that moment, it seemed as if Thisbe was not thinking at all. She thanked Sora. Pleasant thoughts of this day will be the beginning of all problems. Thisbe did not suspect Sora at all. According to the girl, her fiance's help was partly justified by his kindness and honesty, but the biggest reason for this was the girl herself. She was extremely indifferent to others. She was always surrounded by people, so she was always tired of the looks of people around her. So she herself closed her eyes and ears. But the young man did not know that she realized this fact. Thisbe told the young man that she felt happy with him today. She put her hand on her fiance's hand. The young man said that if she liked everything, then he was immensely happy. The girl thanked the groom for always saying kind words. And again, the young man drew attention to this suspicious expression on the girl's face. It was unknown why it was so lonely and sad. What makes her so sad? He always wanted to ask her why she always makes such an expression on her face. Why sometimes she acts as if she is going to leave forever. And the girl slowly released her hand from the groom's hand. If she doesn't want to tell him something, he won't interrogate her. Only recently did he have a guess about this. And he remembered that episode when he slowly walked away from the carriage. The reason is that these rascals dared to harass his noble bride. These bastards were making noise even while they were dying. They asked for forgiveness. They said they were wrong. It was entirely their fault, or they simply made a mistake. They promised to personally apologize. Once upon a time, he humiliated a girl so confidently, and when they pressed him, it was disgusting to see how he crawled at his feet and begged for mercy. They all asked to be spared, and if he had spared them, the man would never have seen him again. The man told his assistants that they could choose the punishment. The perpetrator of the crimes was Sora's personal bodyguard. He asked us if the meeting went well. Sora said that his bodyguard was asking very obvious things. I mean, over the last few days, they have been paying a lot of attention to their bride. It was true. In this matter, if we want to do well, we will have to settle a lot of things. First, that they need to return to the Duke's residence. But Sora said that it seems they didn't do everything quite correctly. There is another matter that needs to be resolved. You said that today he will work late, and it's time to rejoice. Sora picked up the newspaper. He said it was time to visit the debtors, and he handed the final newspaper to his bodyguard. Several days passed. A conspiracy between the Harrington publishing house and the foreign minister was revealed. Was it really all because of the huge debts of the publishing house? Thisbe took over the new newspaper publishing house. Well, it is indicated that they really went bankrupt. At that moment, the maid was standing with the girl, and she asked if the girl was talking, and the publishing house was Harrington. I also heard this news and was very surprised. Despite how much she lived for their complete ruin, she did not at all expect that this could happen in a few days. What was surprising was that the publishing house was huge, but it collapsed in an instant. Who knew that the director had so many gambling debts? After all, there were rumors about his honesty, and he quietly fooled them all. Thisbe also heard these rumors, but it turned out that it was actually true. Were there really such secrets among the nobles? The girl thought that she had some misunderstandings about this, that this publishing house had a lot of debts. The maid said that she would soon meet Duke Sora. You girls suggested that we talk to her about it. Thisbe smiled slyly and said that this should not be done. Thisbe decided that this was not worth doing because she lied about going to meet him today. And the girl smiled slyly. But if she had not done this, she would not have been allowed to act on her own. The girl was asked to refrain from leaving the house today. As she herself knows, well, public opinion lately has not been the best. Thisbe thought so. Thisbe was also forbidden to leave the house. She also needed to refrain from going out alone. This will also benefit her image. Although this was not said directly, going out into the world for Thisbe, who is suspected of murder, would not be the best decision. However, there was only one exception. She was allowed to meet her fiance. Anything else is strictly prohibited. The only thing she was allowed to do was meet with Sora. She agreed with Sorabu not next week. The girl asked if she could visit this too. The man replied that she should do as she wants, but she will definitely take a maid with her, going to present an observation to her. Despite this, on this day she simply must leave the house. Today is the day the young Margrave of Lunnet dies at a black market auction, and she must stop him today. And to leave the house, the girl put on a cloak with a hood. A deep hood would allow her to hide her face. about 2 weeks ago. From the moment she met Sora, she began gathering information to prevent the murder. Holding a newspaper in her hands, the girl asked her fiance to look somewhere. She showed the young man one advertisement. The photo showed a ring. The advertisement was kind of strange. But the young man did not understand what she meant. The girl tried to explain that the photo with the ring was called a cat's wish. This has nothing to do with advertising, and the combination of words is somehow strange. After thinking a little, the young woman said that it could be a code. The girl asked if he could decipher it. Sora said that this is possible because the code is not very complex. If you write the letters as follows and divide them into pairs, then under the code the ring is encoded as cursed. He thought that this was the real name. Since this ring cannot be advertised openly, a special code was used. This is probably a black market advertisement. Damn ring. Now everything becomes more clear. At this point in the original story, the girl dealt with the young Margrave of Lunnet. In the original story, the Margrave was killed in an auction house on the black market. His death was described in detail, since it was an important event that brought Thisbe trouble. Black market. This particular ring was displayed that day. She had absolutely no intention of killing him, but following from the situation, the real criminal would appear at the auction house. In the original, the girl thought that this was the ideal place for reprisals. Sora probably thinks that she won't go there and deciphered it for her. But the girl asked her fiance for forgiveness. She has already arrived there, and the auction was supposed to start any minute. She put the maid who was watching her to sleep in the carriage. Therefore, she could act as she pleased. The place where the auction was held was too calm. At that moment, someone approached the girl and asked if she was okay. It seemed to her that nothing was happening. The girl said that this is how it usually happens. The girl's name was Manhwa, and she was the leader of the Zodiac Information Guild. It seemed to her that nothing would happen today. But was it so? The person who followed her is the Zodiac Guild leader. In the original, Estelle, the main character, had many minions. Among them, the most frequently appearing was the Information Guild from the Zodiac Cafe, disguised as a cafe. In the original, there was no contact between the Zodiac and Thisbe, however. Her position as a saint was too precarious, so she needed power too. She approached them before Estelle developed a strong connection, and as a result, she became the de facto owner of the Zodiac. Well, now they are her arms and legs, not Estelle. And the first auction lot was a bottle filled with alcohol mist. It would be stupid not to use the original if you know it well. What did she plan? She is one of the few assistants she has. Thanks to her, Thisbe managed to get an invitation to the black market. The girl turned to Thisbe. She said that it really wasn't that bad, and suggested that she might just want to buy something. Well, the girl didn't want to buy anything. The young lady was also possessed by the grimoire. 3 million zlotys. Well, nothing can be done. It is impossible to find a grimoire anywhere in the country. What if she gets distracted? Their goal is not to buy things at auction. The girl decided to follow her words and earn trust. The only thing that was not clear was how the murder could be committed. The auction house was overcrowded, and even to attempt to assassinate the Margrave's son. Manhwa was right. People don't usually kill in the middle of an auction house. Surprisingly, however, Thisbe does just that in the original. Thisbe asked the swallowtail if she was really that interested. The girl decided that she would watch with enthusiasm. Swallowtail said that she would be next to the Morgraph. Thisbe asked the girl to go there. She also gave her a bag of money. Nothing special seems to happen. Here it is, the last product for today. This item was Marietta's cursed ring. It was the same ring that the girl saw in the newspaper. The ring was located in an emerald-colored box. Additionally, she stood on a velvet red pillow. It was exactly that ring. The girl took a closer look. The ring shone very strongly due to the lighting. And at that moment, someone's painfully familiar voice turned to Thisbe. She froze in surprise. Can't be. Is Sora really here? The girl looked back and was simply shocked. Her fiance stood nearby in a robe. She didn't expect to see him here at all. The man said yes, he is here. He was also stunned to see the girl there. He didn't think at all that they would meet here. Thisbe couldn't understand what she was doing here. The young man apologized. He wanted to sit next to the girl. Thisbe was surprised why she met exactly the person she least wanted to see here. Will this ring bring bad luck if it remains in the same place? And the girl didn't want her fiancé to think that she went to such auctions. and that she generally visited such hot spots. At this moment, Thisbe's inner essence began to emerge. A little later, the man asked his bride. It was not by chance that the mystery got here. She said everything was right. There were things she wanted to see with her own eyes. She leaned into the kitchen and whispered that this was her first time on the black market. The man didn't understand why she was whispering to him now. He understood everything. Sora was very glad that he would now be with Thisbe. The young man was also a little worried that he came for the first time, but when he saw a familiar face, he immediately stopped being nervous. He immediately calmed down. And the girl who once thought that her fiance Sora was an angel. At that moment, her groom seemed to become an angel, his sister. The girl said that of course she believes him, but why is there something black behind his back? It was amazing. She was still ashamed that her fiancé had caught her in this place, but he definitely won't ask her stupid questions anymore. Moreover, the most important thing now is the safety of her fiancé. That moment, and the girl took his hand. She asked him why he came here. After all, this is a place where a murder may soon occur, and quarrels may be in danger. The man asked if the girl remembered the last time they saw an advertisement for this auction. Thisbe certainly remembered this, and she became interested in this particular ring. The young man asked if bad things had happened recently. Of course they happened. Sora wanted to console her and give her this ring. Did he really go that far for her? To console, he also wanted to buy a special gift. This is how he treats her. Understand that she was interested in this ring. The girl thanked her fiancé for noticing this. However, how did he find her in this crowd? After all, she was in a robe, and a hood covered his head. The young man said that he simply heard her voice and therefore recognized her immediately. The girl was surprised that he could find her simply by her voice. When purchasing the grimoire, she began to speak louder. That's why he recognized her. And it was amazing. He had excellent hearing. Sora said that he could find her wherever she was. With these words, the young man simply melted the girl's heart. Will he be able to find her in a crowd of people if she doesn't say anything? And the man immediately said, of course. Because he had special feelings for her. The girl was simply fascinated. The ring was still up for auction, so they decided not to whisper anymore. It's just an excuse. Wait, they are also at auction. The girl was so engrossed in conversation with her fiancé that she did not pay attention to the auction. The girl quickly began to turn her head and look for where the young Margrave was. He's okay. The presenter's voice shouted 320 million zlotys. He hit the table with the hammer and raised his hands up. The auction was successful, and the auction was completed. The girl realized that the criminal could target him right now when his house is so noisy. And girls are now better than voters. If everything had gone according to plan, she would have stayed until the situation was resolved. Well, if so, then Sora will be drawn into this. The young man extended his hand to Thisbe. He said they should go and pick up the goods. The girl offered to go together. She had an arranged engagement with this kind man, and he still came all this long way just for her sake. And he took the girl's hand tightly. He would never let her get hurt. Never. She didn't want her fiancé to be in danger. Well, she couldn't leave everything like that either. The moment the girl saw Maholon nearby, she asked him to watch and stop this murder. The man quickly moved away. He understood the order. The girl simply burned him with her gaze. Does she really want him to stop the murder? He asked that this be left to him. Such things are exactly his specialty. And the man quickly walked into the crowd. The girl trusted Maholona more than ever. I thought there would be no problems. At this time, the girl's face changed. Now, because of her, Sora has come all this way. And she wanted to get him out of here quickly. At that moment, the girl said that she was very, very tired. She didn't seem to do anything special. It was necessary to return home immediately. The princess had a very difficult daily routine today. You drink the maid, the mystery of sneaking into the black market, preventing a murder, meeting your fiancé at the scene, going on a date, returning home safely. She originally planned to return home straight away. Well, she was very sorry to say goodbye to her fiancé after the meeting, and he invited her to have dinner together. The girl needed to provide some evidence for the maid, and in the end, she ate too much with dessert. Decided that now she needs to quickly take a shower and go to bed, and she slowly walked down the corridor. Suddenly, she heard someone address the master. The girl listened and heard a voice say that this was all for Calix. She didn't understand what was happening there. Now the princess's mere existence undermines Calix's honor. Why did they make such a noise? Were they really bugs? Elders of Calix? Thisbe in difficult times, being a saint for them. Having studied at a young age, she had no choice but to suffer constant insults. They didn't treat her well, but in the original Estelle's case was different. They act as intermediaries for Estelle's entry into Calix. Every time she was in trouble, they happily gave their family strength. The girl approached the slightly open door and began to listen. The men shouted that Estelle Iller should be given the name Alex, and they must restore their honor. Every time she barked at herself this time, now that she was useless. Do they all really want to drive her away? The girl said that she could no longer listen to this, and she pulled the string of pearls that adorned her hand. This noise was heard by everyone in the room. The man started talking about whether the princess had returned, and the grandfather said that most likely his granddaughter had returned. At this moment, the pearl beads jumped onto the floor. Grandfather said they raised their voices at the wrong time and in the wrong place, and they don't need to talk about responsibility at all. Grandfather asked to get out of his house right away. He was very menacing. He also said, what if they don't? He was ready to tear out their tongues. The men were dumbfounded. Out of surprise, it was time for them to hide their companies. They didn't expect Grandpa to behave like this. They told me, okay, it's already late, so they just need to leave. But next time they will definitely get answers to their questions. The girl stood and watched the men go. She wondered if there would be a next time. It would be better if she didn't hear it at all. At that moment, the grandfather asked the princess when she arrived. The princess quickly grabbed her dress in her hands and curtsied. She told her grandfather that she had recently returned. Grandfather, as if still thinking about something, repeated the word not given. He thought for a moment. It was already late when she could have returned. The girl said that she went to meet her fiance. He wanted to accompany her home, so she sent her carriage earlier. You said that it seemed like her bracelet broke and interrupted their conversation. Grandfather was just about to send these people back. In an intermittent voice, the grandfather asked if the girl had heard everything they were talking about. After all, the conversation that took place here, the girl didn't understand why he was doing it again. She asked her grandfather more than once that he didn't need to worry about them. Grandpa said it wasn't because he cared about her. Thisbe herself understood that she had gone too far. Her grandfather was a man for whom the honor of family is much more important than bloodline, and she knew for sure that grandfather was just such a person. You said the princess could go and rest. Why did such a person not agree to accept Estelle? That was the question. And why did he have that expression on his face? Although she shouldn't think about it, she continued to worry. This has happened in the past. Many difficult days. She really wanted to always hear kind words from at least someone. She heard words here from teachers that she was talented. A birthday that even she forgot about, but the maid still remembered and gave her a small gift when she met. It was a completely simple gift, a small pincushion that she made with her own hands. She also gave her heart and expected kindness from people in return. If only someone who said something kind wouldn't be Sir Lunnet, who has an inferiority complex towards Sora. And I wouldn't approach her with insults. The teacher who always said that she loved her for nothing. If she had not found out that she simply wanted to sell her name at a higher price, because her students were saints. On the pillow with needles that the maid gave her, she found the next poisonous one. Then perhaps everything would be completely different. The girl drove away these thoughts. She doesn't need to think about it. She simply didn't have the strength. She still couldn't sleep and tossed around in her bed. One thought bothered her. She needs to find out from the Moholon how everything went. She also needs to read the grimoire. She still needs to write a letter to her fiancé saying that she is okay. But she really didn't want to do it now. If she writes to him a little later, she thinks that the groom will understand everything. The events took place in Sora's house. Someone asked the young man why he was looking at this piece of paper so carefully. Sora simply could not take his eyes off the manuscript. The young man said that it was nothing special. It's just that after meeting him, the girl always wrote that she got there, but today there was no word from her. A man with green hair asked if he really read information libraries. This is a magic item that uses a piece of paper to exchange information. If a person writes a message about his information, this message will appear on the other half of this sheet. The cost of this item is high, equal to the annual county tax, so it can be called a rare luxury item. After a day, the messages written on the newsletter disappear. The green-haired man asked if Sora was using him as a love letter, but this is the first time he sees him live. After all, they said that one sheet is equal to the price of a diamond mine. Could this really be the gift he gave to Lady Thisbe? The young man said that this was exactly the gift, but the look on the girl's face? The expression on the girl's face was very strange. She asked. He didn't cut him and he didn't touch him. She asked to return it immediately. Sora remembered the expression on the girl's face at that moment. He thought it was very cute. If she doesn't write anything, doesn't that mean she just went to bed? The young man asked how about listening to his report first. The young man with green hair was ready to listen to Sora. It was a wise decision, but the young man with green hair said that first of all, the gift he asked for. The winning bid was 320 million zlotys, and as he ordered. At that moment, the man put on the table an emerald-colored box in which the ring was presented at the auction. Algoars said that he tried to kill the target as she was leaving the auction house. Well, someone else appeared there, and this man deals with shadows. As far as he knows, there is only one such person on the continent, and this person was the Zodiac Guild leader. Since he can hide behind the shadows, he cannot reach him. The green-haired man apologized and asked for forgiveness for disappointing Sora. Sora said enough. He himself knew that there was none other than the Zodiac Guild leader himself, and his assistant could not do anything about it. Sora didn't know why the Zodiac was involved, but he was willing to find out later. First, he must kill this insect that was pursuing her. He was not ready to suffer another failure, so that this can serve as an example for others. At that moment, Thisbe shuddered and opened her eyes. She didn't expect that she fell asleep so quickly. She remembered the swallowtail, and she looked at the blue crystal in her hands. The girl quickly asked if Sir Lunnet was alive. The man said sure, it couldn't have been any other way, and she also said that the girl was right. Someone's targeting Lunnet or something. Hidden in the shadows, the man gave chase, but he noticed it and ran away. Judging by his good instincts, I can say that he is an unusual person. This man was experienced enough to notice his darkness. Darkness is the ability to control shadows, and not only shadows that have arisen and hidden light, but all darkness. This means that few can defeat a Mahalan in the dark. If someone could attract such a talented person, someday he would try to kill again. As she spoke, the girl thought that it would be better to just let this man die. The criminal's antics were inspiring, and it was true. It's just a pity that it was not possible to find the culprit even after attracting the Zodiac. This means that there is a high probability that the criminal has a more significant status than him. It would be nice to at least know the intention of the criminal, and yet why he does it. Doesn't this mean that he is her ardent admirer? The girl was surprised. The answer was very naive. Perhaps when it was announced that Estelle was the main character of the real oracle, she gained followers. Or rather, one could say that the goal was to direct suspicion at her and then destroy her. The girl heard the gentleman's voice behind the doors. She was very surprised to hear him. She again heard the voices of her grandfather and someone else. Swallowtail asked if something had happened to the lady, and the girl said that she would look now. The princess quickly went out into the corridor and asked what happened. After all, her grandfather very rarely raised his voice. Someone asked him to listen carefully. Only Thisbe was and will be Princess Calyx. The girl herself heard this conversation with her grandfather, the landing, and she didn't understand what that meant. Some gentleman stood in front of my grandfather and shouted that he should listen to him. He asked whether the princess was now helping the family or, on the contrary, harming her. Grandfather doesn't know this. He didn't seem to understand. Grandfather did not say that he would not protect Lady Iller. He simply said that he would support her since she was from the Calyx family. The man was surprised. Is this really protection? The man said, doesn't Grandpa know that to protect the saint named Alex, it would be best to register her as an adopted daughter? The man who stood in front of Grandfather was Earl Gillette. Does he really mean to say that Thisbe is not included in this best? After all, she lived all her life as a saint and thought that she was a child oracle. As it became known, this is not so. Why is she still suspected of murder despite this? Is it possible to imagine now how the girl feels and what she is experiencing? Throughout her childhood, the girl never heard loving words from her grandfather. So why is he so protective of her now? It seemed to her that he was not paying attention to her at all. But even if he did it now, she still decided to leave. It's better not to listen anymore. The girl went to the window and looked down. Come to think of it, the day of Count Gillette's visit coincides with the day Estelle first visited Calix. And it was strange. According to the original, she spoke with the Duke to Alex. And it was a peaceful environment. How did it all turn out this way? First of all, her goal is to be kicked out of the family. But is it worth helping her then? And the girl knocked on the glass with her carriage. She asked Estelle to go out for a minute. She wanted to talk to her. Since childhood, she grew up listening to the story of the little saint from Calix. How can a saint be with us at such a young age? She heard that it was Estelle who suggested opening the temple safes during the spring crisis. Estelle, please grow up and become a great person too. After all, the saint is truly a wonderful person. Someday. She also wants to become as cool as her. The saint became an idol for her even in childhood. She first met that saint at a hunting competition, and suddenly a monster appeared there. People began to panic and scream that a monster had appeared. Everyone needs to leave and run without looking back. It was very noisy and scary. But the saint approached this monster. She realized that the monster could not sleep due to the noise, and they shouted where the knights were and what they were doing instead of finishing off this monster. And the saint realized that this child was only frightened by the noise that the people on the shore made. If this continues, the saint may also be in danger. But the girl fearlessly stepped out in front of the monster. Everyone shouted that it was dangerous. But the girl didn't listen to anyone and was confident in herself. She walked up to the monster and simply hugged him. She mentally asked the animal not to be afraid. She asked him to calm down. And the monster began to calm down before our eyes. His eyes were no longer so fierce, and people continued to whisper. They asked to look at it. Lady Iller calmed the monster. She did what the saint could not do. How could this happen? The monster quickly calmed down and closed his eyes. If you think about it like that, it seems like the lady is a relative of the saint on a side branch. This means that Calix's blood flows in her too. Is it possible that the heroine of the oracle will change? It is strange that she is the one who has such power. Moreover, Princess Calix and Lady Iller are the same. Everyone was sure that the child of the mentioned courtyard was actually Lady Iller. Estelle was stunned. She simply calmed the monster down because she was afraid that the saint might get hurt. Is it possible that she caused trouble for the saint? Estelle didn't know what to do. The saint must have been angry too. And the girls approached each other. However, contrary to her expectations, the girl said it was really amazing. Thanks to her, they all managed to save their lives. The saint reacted positively. She was very sad that she could not see her after that day. She never thought that she would meet the saint again. At the same time, she was still holding her hand. The girl greeted her formally once again. Thisbe said welcome to Calix, and she bowed to the girl. I thought she was sleeping at that moment. She thanked the girl for the reception. Thisbe said that Estelle was in the carriage for a long time, but it seems that after that she decided to get out. The girl asked if she was really waiting for her maternal uncle. Everything was right. The girl was just worried that she was a little late. And she asked again what happened here. Well, can this problem be called a problem? The girl was wondering what happened since the Holy One had to go out. Thisbe agreed to tell her what happened along the way. Estelle was stunned that the saint was holding her hand. And the girl asked Estelle. She looked the girl in the eyes again, and she promised that she would definitely include her in the family. At the same time, we are having a conversation in the central hall of Duke Calix's residence. Grandfather said that for now he had no plans to do anything that would jeopardize Thisbe's position. Moreover, isn't this child suspected of murder? Grandfather said that this child needs family protection. She said that this girl was a granddaughter whom he had never treated kindly in his life. And grandfather asked that it was not necessary now. He put his hand to his forehead. There was also something that grandfather deliberately avoided because it reminded him of his dead son. All he has to do is call her a saint and also raise her to be a person you can be proud of. The man asked his grandfather. He still doesn't want to talk to the princess. And Grandpa again asked for enough. He said that children usually cry when they see his face. He also asked his assistant to take care of it, and he handed the assistant a piece of paper with a list of tutors he had chosen. He assigned her the best teachers on the continent. This will allow her to live her life without envying others. And he himself remained in the shadows. He believed that I didn't need a grandfather like him. All he can do is give orders in a military tone. What kind of child would like such a rude old man? He often watched his granddaughter from behind the colonies. He never came close to her. And when we competed, the princess was in pain. The maid said that she would quickly go and call the doctor and tell the owner. Well, the girl always asked the united people not to tell her grandfather. After all, grandfather is a busy man, and he shouldn't be disturbed over trifles. She didn't think he would want to know about his granddaughter's scratches. What did she have to go through? And only now the old man was thinking about it. Although he was not a good grandfather, but he had no intention of harming her in any way. Thisbe is the only granddaughter. And the grandfather said to the man with glasses, since he is also a father, grandfather thought that he could understand his feelings. The man with glasses was very surprised. He understood everything. If the head of the family says so, then so be it. At that moment, his granddaughter came into the room, and Estelle stood behind her. The girl quickly announced that she had returned. Grandfather was surprised. How could she subject him to such a test? Grandfather grabbed his head. What was his granddaughter thinking? Why did she bring Estelle with her? On the contrary, the man with glasses was very surprised and invited the girls to come through. He barely managed to convince this persistent guy. The man with glasses greeted the princess joyfully. He didn't understand how it happened that they came with Estelle. The girl cheerfully greeted Count Juliet. Thisbe said that she was returning from a walk and saw an unfamiliar carriage. It seemed to her that there was a person inside, so she became interested. Wasn't that rude? But the man quickly waved his hands. He said that Estelle also wanted to meet the princess. And he looked carefully at the girl. Thisbe quickly grabbed Estelle's hand. She said that on the way here she had already spoken to Lady Estelle. They discussed the reason why she came to the mansion today. Estelle was seriously surprised. The young man said that she herself could bring her to visit, since he has not yet received permission from the head of the family. The Count thought at that moment. He had not yet invited Lady Miller as a guest. Thisbe thought about it. Does grandfather really want to leave her in the carriage in such heat? Calix's etiquette does not involve greeting guests so harshly, and she knew this very well. The grandfather told his granddaughter that she was right, but there was one thing. In the current situation, it is difficult to bring Lady Iller to Calix. Doesn't he know what that means? Does he really mean granting Lady Estelle the surname Calix? Estelle was surprised. Her eyes were open and her mouth was open in surprise. But Grandpa said that everything was true. He didn't intend to do this. At that moment, the granddaughter said that she thought grandfather would act wisely and did not want to add anything, but now she would have to do it. She was a little disappointed that he had treated Lady Insel rudely just because of something like that. The grandfather was very surprised by his granddaughter's words. It is confirmed that Lady Estelle is to be protected by Calix. First of all, the princess did not want people to get hurt because of this. After all, Lady Estelle is the child of the oracle, so she must be treated as such. The grandfather said that his granddaughter does not understand at all and does not know what consequences what she is saying now will have. Well, the princess lowered her eyes and said that she, like no one else, knows about the consequences. It was very strange for grandfather to hear that she knew about the consequences and continued her speech. And he carefully looked at his granddaughter's eyes. Said she was fine, and she asked the girl to please make a smart decision. She asked to expel her. It doesn't matter who becomes the adopted daughter or the saint, and she already imagined her departure, when she told everyone bye, and off she went to the magic kingdom of Sice. This was her dream. The reason her grandfather does this is not because he cares about me. She thought he didn't want to be criticized for refusing his own blood. Grandfather grabbed his head. He understood everything. Since she says so, he gives Lady Iller the surname Calix. Everyone was happy. It happened. But grandfather told the Count that he was rejoicing early. Grandfather said that the last name he gives her is de Calix. Everyone was surprised. What does he imply? After that, everyone understood what the name de Calix means. This surname is given to someone who is not a member of this family. No more. And Thisbe began to think. Everything didn't turn out the way she wanted. Is it really so difficult for her grandfather to register her? The most important thing now is that Estelle herself does not refuse this. The princess is very confident that this will not happen. Estelle thought about it. If she becomes Calyx, she will take the place of the princess. Just recently, she heard from the princess that she was a saint. It's time to enjoy the position she deserves. Estelle was surprised. But what about her? She said that she would also find her place. She asked Estelle not to worry about her at all. At that time, she was simply worried about the role of a saint. She didn't even think about how the princess felt. And she asked the princess not to worry, and she decided that from now on, she would be on the side of the princess. Thisbe said she would go. The count needs to talk to each other. Now everything will return to its place. And then she could finish the rest of her plan, and she remembered her fiance Sora, and also about the letter that he had already written to her. The girl approached the table and thought that it seemed that the answer to the letter she had written to him had already arrived. Although she clearly feels Manu. Usually he doesn't really need this. Through Manu, she can sense another person's emotions. Although this option is also good, it is still different from a face-to-face conversation, and the princess began to read the letter. The young man wrote to the girl good morning. She felt all the emotions of her fiancé when he wrote this letter. That's why he didn't wait for the letter. He was worried that something had happened to the princess. And he was incredibly glad that they left him a short message. Well, it turns out there was a quarrel waiting for her letter, and he was really very worried about her. He turns out to be a really good person. He was very concerned that she did not answer his letter yesterday. Therefore, now he feels great relief and joy at receiving an answer from her. He was worried that something might have happened to the princess. The young man also asked the girl whether she would like to become the owner of the ring that they saw at the auction. The yellow diamond in the ring resembles the color of her eyes. It was so strange that her fiancé wrote even such little things. There were 2 pigeons sitting on the window who were waiting for an answer. The girl wrote briefly because she was in a hurry to contact him. And as always, he writes a lot. The young man asked the girl if she remembered that the day after tomorrow, there would be a banquet at the imperial palace. Since he doesn't know what clothes she will wear, she decided to write and find out through a letter. I have already asked for an immediate answer, and she will read it right away. And the girl exclaimed that it was almost time. If it weren't for him, she would have completely forgotten about it. She needs an answer as soon as possible. Strict dress code. Now it is fashionable to match the color of the eyes with the color of the gemstone on the ring. And immediately the girl's answer came. The young man understood everything that there must be strict dress. It's a shame he can't give her a clear answer because he's not that quick to pick up on trends. The girl thought, most likely he was somewhere nearby. We get a quick response, because I was waiting for a letter from her. I'm going for it nicely. The girl asked him if the approximate suit was ready. She said that he always dresses well, even if he doesn't know the trend. The man said he had a boutonniere in the shape of a ball, modeled after a Salvatore seal. The reason his clothes are not bad. Clothes, well-versed in trends. And at that moment, the man thought, he wrote a little extra, we should add something else. The young man asked why the girl mentioned pigeons. Did anything special happen today? Thisbe laughed. He was just a sweetheart. Looks like he was shy. Some time ago, Saint Lady Estelle visited the public residence because of the ball that we are scheduled to have the day after tomorrow. And the young man asked the question, what does Lady Esther have to do with the banquet the day after tomorrow? The girl said what she thought, because it would be necessary to tell that Lady Estelle received the surname Calyx. The young man asked his bride, are Estelle's books hostile? After all, there were rumors that I hope he hates her. There are no such rumors as she mentioned. He only asked because she had gone through a lot because of it. Well, yes, if you look at it from the outside, the rest of them should have contradictory relationships. After all, they were relatives and claim the title of saint. She said that she and Estelle get along well, and she will inevitably be a good person. In the novel, Estelle's kind heart was the key to saving the world. She has long suffered from external criticism. Looks like he was worried about it too. There is nothing special about the emotions Sora feels through Mana. The girl wrote, thank you for your concern. She also added that Lady Estelle is a good person. Sora thought for a few seconds, that Estelle is a good person. He told the girl that he follows everything she says. He asked to remember that every betrayal begins with a hypocritical smile. She completely understood his concerns, but she asked him to be calm. The girl also asked to believe her. Sora realized that the girl was too soft. There was no such choice. He was ready to remove all obstacles in her path. She doesn't have to worry about anything. At this moment, Sora called his bodyguard, who at that moment was defending his dagger. Sora said he feels like the number of targets has increased. The man was surprised that someone else had appeared. He said that if 2 people died in the Imperial Palace, it would be easily discovered. Sora asked her not to worry. The goal is not to kill an increased number of targets. This goal, leader of the Zodiac Constellation Guild, he was problematic before, but now, when the head of the Zodiac Constellation Guild finds out that Estelle Iller is the cousin of Aquarius, he will not sit idly by. His beloved bride said that Estelle was not a threat to her, but he would not want to expose her to any slightest danger. The assistant was ready to give a warning to the Zodiac and Estelle. Sora asked the leader of the Zodiac Guild not to kill, but in exchange for saving his life, let him become the culprit of all murders, and he will be brought to justice. Zodiac was the only S-class information guild on the continent. The name comes from the word for the 12 constellations of the Zodiac. The positions and names between them are also borrowed from the names of the constellations. The head of the Zodiac is a constellation. The chapter's nickname for the powerful figure in the Zodiac, Cassiopeia, is the anchor star, and the 12th leader is neither the groom. Each of the 12 signs of the Zodiac is given one constellation, and the problem is that one of the leaders is Estelle's cousin. Sora was sitting at the table counting some document. Thisbe, but there is one thing. It wasn't enough to be born happy, but now she's also taking everything Thisbe has, and also joins the Calyx family. Sora was simply stunned. He sat and looked thoughtfully. After thinking a little, the young man spoke. Their conversation convinced him. Even Estelle's very existence poses a threat to Thisbe. Sora told his assistant Laz to go to the butler and tell him to prepare the boutonniere. If the young man simply dealt with the remaining targets, there would be no one left to bully or threaten Thisbe. And then, will she, who seems ready to leave at any moment as if this place is not for her, be able to stay by his side? I thought for a moment. Thisbe rushed towards. After all, her fiance was already waiting for her, and she was most likely late. She ran as fast as she could. Her hair was styled in an updo. She wore earrings with blue stones. The same stone was on the brooch on her chest. Her cousin walked next to her. He said that of course her fiancé was already waiting for her. After all, a whole hour has passed since the promised time, and the young man laughed cheerfully. Thisbe asked not to remind her of this. She already knew everything perfectly well, and it was very awkward. But his brother also said that today he was not observing the target very well. He asked for a jug of water, and the young man asked the girl to please look after her cousin, as he might be in danger. After that, after thinking a little, the young man said that the girl should at least watch Estelle, because he himself will follow the target. Suddenly the cousin asked the princess how she could know this. The girl thought a little. What does he imply? The fact that the newly proclaimed saint is the cousin of Aquarius, and Thisbe involuntarily groaned. Looks like someone spilled the beans. But the girl protested. She said that this is not entirely true at first glance, because the stars always know more than she does. Inna now asked if she really wanted to avoid answering by mentioning the guild's motto. Thisbe understood. Thumbs up. We absolutely couldn't figure out how to explain this to the young man, and the young man just smiled. Everything was as always. The girl did not know how to lie at all, and when she even really wanted to do it. But by her appearance, one could immediately determine that she was deceiving. Judging by the reaction, it seems like someone actually said it. If it's not someone from the guild, nothing can be done. The young man said that he would contact her later at the agreed time. Okay, and adjusted the bracelet on her wrist. The man wanted to say something but fell silent, and the girl stood and looked at him carefully. She mentioned without even realizing, and this happened not only now, but this also happened before. The girl felt that the memories of the book and her past life were becoming more and more mixed up. After some time, the memories of her previous life will most likely be forgotten. What was clear was the memory of this world. It's as if all the information she has about this world is trying to be erased. And the girl decided that she needed to be more careful, so that no one guesses anything. And now she has already arrived in the courtyard where her fiancé was waiting for her. He stood at the entrance and carefully looked at the recently arrived girl. He said the girl's name, and I was very glad that she finally arrived. The girl turned to the young man and asked her to forgive her for being late. She came up and touched the young man's face with her hands. She knew that he had most likely been waiting for her for a long time. On this day, they wore blue and white robes that looked very harmonious with each other. There was also a blue stone in the outfits. The girl saw that the boys' faces were filled with color. She asked if she was okay with him, and the young man said that he was fine. He said that he could wait for his bride even for a whole month. The girl was indignant. "What is he talking about? It's absolutely impossible to be like that. I informed you in advance and thought he would come by carriage, but he still didn't show up. Sora said that the crew will arrive soon." He gently took the girl's hand and looked into her eyes. The girl was surprised that he wouldn't go anywhere without her. Sora said, of course, he won't leave her anywhere. The girl took her fiance's arm, and she knew that at that moment she was not lying. Even if he breaks off their engagement, she would not want to lose this relationship that has now begun. When she thought about leaving, cutting off all ties, she didn't think that she could act like that, especially when she looked at him like that. Sometimes the young man stood up a little uneasy. Why is she looking at him like that? The girl laughed and said that she thought he was even more handsome today. How she wished he had everything. She needs to prepare for the knowledge as soon as possible. If she continued to stay here, she would only cause him trouble. However, the girl looked at the stone that adorned her bracelet on her hand. Now is the time to contact Manhwa. She could only deal with this young man through a magical blue stone. Mr. Luned is nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, the son of the empire appeared in the room. His Majesty the Emperor, Prince Kilian Leandros. The young man was very handsome, and he greeted the gathered people. Due to the sudden death of his elder brother, he was lucky enough to become crown prince. The girl stood and carefully examined this young man. He was the main character of this novel. And at that moment, the man stood and looked at the red-haired girl, Estelle. Thisbe stood and looked into his face. Even if no one else knows, she knows Kilian's true identity. And she remembered how they were still children. Why does he follow the saint like that? One boy said that you can get a lot from dogs. At that moment, little Thisbe stood around the corner and carefully watched the boys. And the young man said that she had everything he needed. Some kind of plan had already been born in his head. Crown Prince Kilian Leandros. He is the main male character of this novel. Thisbe knew very well that they would all meet here. She couldn't believe that she would have to see his face so soon. He is here with whom she often met at various official events since childhood. He is her childhood friend. Perhaps even if the prince finds out that she is not a saint, he will most likely remain by her side. This will not affect the toy at all. When she was young and naive, only such thoughts visited her. Until she heard Kilian's true feelings that day. She walked around the room and wondered where he had gone. After all, she clearly heard his voice. The girl ran and looked for her friend Kilian, and so she approached the room where two boys were sitting. One of them was her friend Kili, and she heard one boy ask the other why he followed that and was a saint. The girl was simply stunned. She covered her mouth with her hand so as not to say a word and not give herself away. And one of the boys said that they could benefit from it. Thisbe, hiding behind the door, realized that now they were talking about her. The boy said that she had everything he needed and laughed slyly. She turned out to be a deception. Someone paid Miss Estelle a compliment. She was told that she looked absolutely amazing. The girl was a little embarrassed and thanked her. Everyone talked only about Estelle. People remembered that she saved everyone at the hunting club there. Many praised her courage. Wherever a person finds himself, the same stories are everywhere. After that evening, Estelle's story was heard throughout social circles. It was incredible that such a fragile girl could tame a monster. But for some reason, the Calyx hid it and did not release it into the world for a long time. However, while curiosity grew around the real saint, Estelle appeared holding the hand of Prince Kilian's crown. It was the debut of a truly perfect saint. Sora watched this opening closely. At the same time, he observed Thisbe herself. It was very cruel to the girl. Thisbe stood and silently looked at this couple. Suddenly, a quarrel approached the girl and asked why she was so worried. The girl seemed to wake up and asked why he got it. Sora said that he had been watching her for a long time, and she had been looking only at this couple for a long time. While she was looking at them, apparently, without realizing it, her face changed. Well, she smiled and said that she was completely fine. The girl asked her fiance whether he was uncomfortable being next to her alone. Maybe if instead of the eternally ignored place next to me you were there, then perhaps... But Sora said that this was out of the question. He's not uncomfortable at all. He liked to be anywhere his bride was nearby. Sora looked into Thisbe's eyes. They were close to each other, and at that moment it was fun. She cried out loudly, "The princess," and also that she is very happy to meet her. Thisbe was very surprised to see Miss Estelle next to her. She said that the princess is very, very beautiful today. Thisbe once complimented Estelle. She really liked her beautifully chosen dress, but there was one thing. One thing she didn't understand was why His Highness the Crown Prince was also here. At that moment, the prince took the girl's hand in his own. He said that Miss Estelle is his companion for today, and gentlemen are obliged to accompany their companions. And the prince tenderly kissed the girl's hand. He asked if there were any problems. Problems, yes, they are always through the roof. And the biggest problem of them all is that the princess has no desire to talk to her. The girl turned to Sora. Sora quickly looked at his companion and asked what she wanted to tell him. Thisbe said that something was dry in her throat. She asked her fiance if she could get him some apple cider. I need to say that there are no problems. Couples danced around the room. The prince thought about it. Does Duke Sora really not know that Thisbe has been allergic to apples since childhood? Thisbe herself forgot about it. Yes, they both understood this. The emperor was also allergic to apples. This was why one could never find a pit in the imperial palace, even if one looked without much effort. It was also impossible to see a single apple tree in the garden. The atmosphere changed in an instant. Although Thisbe clearly knew about this, she still made such a request to the duke, because she could not show it in front of the groom. Every second it became more and more exciting. Estelle was stunned. I asked His Highness the Prince and the Princess. It seemed to her that they were close to each other, and she asked them about it. They are not close by any chance. But basically she said that no, they are not close. Thisbe also laughed and said that they were not close at all. Estelle said it was a shame. It seemed to her that they had been friends with him since childhood. Thisbe, what are friends? She never thought about it. If you think about it this way, the period while they communicated was very short. This was just for a few years. But when the girl found out the whole truth about him, she stayed away from the young man. I didn't mind this attitude at all. The young man said that it was enough to build a castle during this time, and the prince laughed merrily. Thisbe said that she didn't mind at all. If he wanted, he could go and build a castle right now. Estelle saw for the first time how the princess communicated in an informal setting. The two were truly close. For a long time I stood and observed their behavior. They made fun of each other and laughed. The prince told Lady Iller that Thisbe did not love him at all. At this point, Estelle asked how about dancing together as a sign of reconciliation. Estelle said that she heard that in some cities people invite others to dance, that you will make peace. Estelle invited the prince and princess to dance. Now I said this is a great idea. She nudged their backs and said that she would be waiting for them here. Thisbe wanted to object, but it was too late. And she said that Estelle is simply an unstoppable saint. And he asked, why don't they dance for a minute? It sounded funny. The prince stood opposite the princess and they looked at each other. And then the music started playing. The prince gently put his arm around Thisbe's waist and pressed her close to him. He asked her to come a little closer to him. She deliberately stepped on the prince's foot with her heel. She said that she knew everything perfectly well, even without him. The prince smiled. This girl's character remains the same. The girl decided that she needed to end this as soon as possible. But too many people have been watching them for a long time. If she leaves the prince now and leaves, very unpleasant rumors will spread. And she doesn't need this at all now. The only way out is to just dance. Prince said her dancing skills haven't changed at all. The prince asked, judging by her harsh tone, she still continues to hate him. The girl has the strength of the prince to be honest. She asked what trick he used to bring Estelle to her. And she didn't understand at all what we were talking about there. Estelle Iller. Dam said that Miss Estelle really wanted to say hello to the princess, but she couldn't find an excuse, so he just helped her with it. But if he hadn't found her, he would have just wanted to go. The girl said he could leave right now. The girl asked what his business was. The young man smiled and said that he just wanted to see her reaction. And at that moment, he quickly made the girl dance. He wanted to see this more than anything else. And at that moment, the young man called Thisbe Louise Calix his unfortunate saint. And then a girl walked towards them like white shoes with a bow. Everyone watched her carefully. Isn't this the saint who just ran away? She probably heard everything. She needs to be as careful with her words as possible. A Kaylee family who achieved great success as traders, and a family that has been loyal to the royal family for generations. All these people are needed to come to power in the future. And the young man said that everything was fine. He is not the kind of person who takes revenge for something like that. And if he tells adults about this, they will calmly ask about it on his behalf. To win them over to his side, he needs to find a common enemy. The prince was sure that Thisbe would understand him. Perseverance and memory superior to peers, and even the courage to do something for a specific goal. The girl stood hiding the key behind her back. Went too far using it as. The prince said that if she wanted, she could also use it as much as she wanted. After all, they were friends who knew each other's true faces. And the girl somehow looked sadly at her friend, who was watching her through the window. The boy did not immediately understand why the girl had such an expression on her face. Couples were dancing in the room, and suddenly the prince said he never thought that she was so bad at dancing. The girl asked if this phrase is not rude towards the girl. The young man said that why don't she look at her fiance instead? After all, it's all written all over his face. Thisbe asked her not to make her laugh. After all, he doesn't know him at all. The prince said it was true. If she doesn't believe him, then she can look at her fiancé herself. And he lifted the girl by the waist. A little further away stood a very upset Sora. He held a glass of cider in his hands. The girl looks at her groom. His look was very upset. He wanted Thisbe to return as quickly as possible. The girl said that this is not so, and how dare he lie to her. The prince was surprised how she could not notice this. Apparently, she is completely blinded by love, and the prince finally felt alive. Said he really missed her. Not a day went by when he didn't hear her name. Will there be a new saint now there are even rumors that she is a murderer? Thisbe was surprised. Have the rumors really gotten that big? The girl tried to step aside, but I couldn't. Her foot collided with the foot of her escort. She tried to retreat in the other direction, but the prince's leg again prevented her from doing this. The girl was a little upset. I realized what this step was, and if this continues, it will simply fall. The prince told the girl to be careful. He told her that we made a mistake here. There are rumors that this time there will be an attempt to assassinate the crown prince. The girl said she was sorry. She would be glad if these were not rumors. Suspicion of murder is emerging right now, that the girl is not to blame. And then the music ended, and the princess and prince stopped dancing. She thought again about this phrase that the prince had just said. He knew it wasn't her fault. But what does this mean? And the prince, bending down to Thisbe, whispered that she could find him at any time if she needed help. The girl moved a little away from the prince and looked after him. Could she really find him when she needed help? Then now, if she doesn't want to become a criminal, he wants her to kneel before him. Is this really what this bastard is asking for? And the princess imagined this scene for a moment. However, how does he know that she is innocent? This can't be true. Was Killian himself involved in this? There is simply no other option. There is still a possibility. Even in the original novel, Killian killed people for specific purposes or caused trouble for fun. If he is truly guilty, then she is now in the tiger's den. If suddenly the situation changes and Lunnet is killed if the Mahalan is caught, then no one will truly believe her innocence, and she will lose any chance of refuge. Then she... And at this moment, Estelle's joyful cries. She said it was cool, and the fact that they both danced beautifully. At that moment, Sora approached the girl. His eyes were sad. He said he watched them dance. He had no idea about this because they always danced together. It was even better to see her from the side. The girl thanked her groom and smiled sweetly. At that moment, it seemed to her that she could not breathe. Sora quickly presented the girl with a glass of wine. The young man said that the cider she asked for was not available. He thought she wanted a drink, so he brought her this refreshing drink. And he handed the girl a glass. The princess thought that if she drank something now, she would definitely vomit, and she slowly brought the glass up. But if she refuses, she will ignore Sora's sincerity. But there is no way to do this. At that moment, he approached them. He apologized and said that he was very thirsty. He asked the princess how about giving it to him. The princess did not at all expect that Killian would approach them now. The girl didn't know what he was thinking when he intervened in their conversation, but she decided that it was for the best. Sora at that moment looked angrily at the prince. The princess asked her groom if everything was okay with him. Sora, with an ominous face, said that everything was fine with him. The princess saw the expression on her fiance's face. Just for a moment, but she saw this expression on his face. At that moment, the stone that decorated the bracelet on her hand began to glow. And this means that Machion has made contact. And the girl heard the voice of the swallowtail. He said something about the second floor, about the terrace. Well, his voice was somehow different. The girl decided that something had happened to the boy. She needs to hurry now. And she quickly began to leave. I noticed that the princess was getting ready somewhere. Thisbe said that it seemed her friend was looking for her, and now she urgently needs to leave. Sora was surprised. The same kind of friend. Thisbe repeated the name Seidelin several times. She said it wouldn't last long and would only take a minute. Estelle said that the princesses looked kind of sick. Is everything okay with her? She asked her to wait and touched the girl's hand with her hand. Thisbe quickly pulled back her hand. She said she would be back soon. She quickly turned around and walked away. Everyone stood there confused. They watched as Thisbe walked away. Everyone understood that something had happened to the girl. Everyone once again remembered the scene when Estelle wanted to take the girl's hand. And now she quickly leaves the room. Estelle carefully follows the princess with her gaze. Estelle was so kind, and she did so. Are these rumors true? There are rumors that the false saint is a murderer. Although nothing has been revealed yet, who else is it other than this scammer? Estelle was upset. Oh no, because of her, the princess was misunderstood again. Estelle stood and wondered what she should do now. After all, the princess always treated her kindly. It was just an awkward situation, that's all. Estelle said that she needed to go after the princess, and she quickly ran away. The prince tried to stop her, but it was too late. Thisbe remembered the words. He definitely said this about the second floor of the terrace. It seemed like the young man was calling in a hurry. Most likely, this is clearly not okay. The longer she hesitates, the more dangerous the situation becomes. No matter what mission Mahalan went on, he always returned safe and sound. The girl really hoped that this time would not be an exception. She will only be glad, and the girl who made her way to the second floor of the terrace shouted the name of the swallowtail. Well, at that moment, someone quickly covered the girl's mouth with his hand. Someone asked her to be silent. When the girl turned around, her friend Mahalan stood in front of her. And you cried? There was blood. I asked the girl to remain silent because perhaps I still wouldn't give it to someone. The girl looked carefully at her friend. When she saw her friend, she was horrified. His face was covered in wounds. At this moment, the young man quickly hugged the girl. He knew that she would come to his aid. The girl understood because we are not talking about trauma. And she also said that his body was consumed by a shadow monster. This bridge, the parasite takes the host in exchange for rape. If you do something wrong, you can eat an ability, which in itself is a weakness. And you need to quickly clean it with healing or destroy the monster. Thisbe noticed that the bleeding was too heavy, and she is unable to stop him. If he loses more blood, the Mahalan will be in danger. Therefore, in the end, there is only one way. This is the healing ritual. But there is still time to get to the temple. Mahalan moaned and groaned. Most likely, he was in severe pain. The girl pursed her lips. A tear appeared on her cheek. Suddenly, the girl stood up. There was no other way out. The princess decided that no one should know about what was about to happen. And she quickly looked around. Something like that, and she didn't know if she would succeed. Hope everything works out. Saddle Malik Sagittarius, Klaus Aquarius, Delta Capricorn. She turned to the spirits. She repeated again, may all 12 zodiac signs be blessed. And all the books dedicated to divine power and magic began with approximately the same thing. Because under the sun from the day of 12 zodiac signs with Earth, there was divine power and mana. And she was still researching methods of concretizing mana and practicing attracting the power of the constellations. Moreover, people generally possess the mana attribute. Only 6 constellations could be processed, which is the maximum number of constellations governed by each attribute. However, due to the fact that she can handle magic as a divine power, she did not pay attention to mana attributes and could not control 12 constellations at once. This means that all the mana can be dealt with. Last time she was lucky enough to learn easy-to-use formations. And at that moment the girl heard. The spirits turned to her. They asked the young mortal why she was so eager to summon them. And then the 3 constellations that she called upon instantly appeared in front of her. The girl was happy. It worked. The princess began to beg for the zodiac constellations to help her. She said it was her friend. One of the spirits said that mana alone is not enough here, and it's stupid to just use it. The spirit called the princess an arrogant fool, but it was simply necessary. She had no other choice. There are 3 main ways to obtain the power of the 12 signs of the zodiac: borrowing part of the power of the constellations, descent, allowing the constellation to inhabit the human body for a moment, and invocation, where the constellation directly comes out and uses its power. What she tried to do now was the most difficult summoning of all 3. Capricorn ran back cheerfully. Difficult because the constellation can easily refuse to help the caster. And you told them that this is a child who hasn't even read all the grimoires properly. Capricorn said that he should be changed, but he is not interested in children. The princess sharply replied that if he was not going to help, then he could leave here. It was very risky, but the princess stood her ground. If he doesn't want to help her, she will call another constellation. But there was no other way other than this. And Capricorn asked if she was taking on too much with the power she possessed. And the girl said that her friend was dying right now, and she must save him at any cost. Capricorn hacked again in surprise. And at that moment, everyone realized that this was not just a child. This was a brave child. Capricorn said he liked it. It would be a shame to refuse such a body, although it is necessary. And he said he was Delta Capricorn, answers the call of the caster. The girl was happy. She succeeded. She managed to convince the zodiac signs, and they agreed to help her. The call was successful. The energy was sincere. The adult said that he likes honest people. And they decided to help her. And not only Capricorn, but Sagittarius too. Suddenly, someone grabbed the girl's dress. She looked around and saw that Aquarius was also not against help. This exceeded all her expectations. The spirits demanded only one thing, that the girl explain to them what to do. They surrounded Thisbe and were ready to carry out her orders. She asked them not to worry. She will leave them to do what they are pros at. At this moment, Sora was standing near the window thinking. Thisbe was gone for a very long time. The young man thought that perhaps something had happened to her. At that moment, the prince approached the rubbish. He said that the duke had a very bad character. Sora asked, "What difference does it make to him?" He didn't know that this would happen as soon as Thisbe left. It was a great pity that he found him like this. This was their first meeting. The prince said that, for example, Thisbe would see him every week. And yet he still doesn't know what kind of person he is. Sora stood and was silent. And I remembered one of the scenes. Thisbe warned the prince not to approach either her or her fiance. It was at that moment that Sora remembered this conversation. The prince called Thisbe heartless, and he asked her if her fiancé knew about it. The princess said that of course she didn't know. There is no one to whom she would treat the same way as a prince. Before all people, kind Thisbe became incredibly frank with the crown prince. And this fact made the prince jealous. And at that moment, when the men were communicating with each other, Sora heard someone call out to him. It was Thisbe. She ran as fast as she could and asked for forgiveness for being away for long enough. Sora was very happy to see her. The same could not be said about the prince. The princess ran up to the young men and once again apologized to them. And the prince thought he needed to provoke him even more. Perhaps in such a situation he would not follow Thisbe. The prince thought that Sora was definitely hiding something. The groom asked his bride if she had a good conversation with her friend. The princess said yes. She was close to being hated. She was introduced and arrived later than she promised. This can be called just a meeting with a friend. But no one knew what really happened. In fact, she saved her friend from death. The girl asked not to worry. She asked the constellation to do what they do best. At that moment, the mortal did not have much mana left. If this continues, the prizes will end before the zodiac signs can help her. But the girl knew a way to deal with this. After all, there is mana in the air too. All she needs is to use her mana as a filter. The princess asked not to worry about mana and act quickly. Among the 12 constellations, Aquarius is the best ruler. And she asked Aquarius to heal the Mahalan. Aquarius brought her hands to the guy's chest. She felt that he was very weak. But she can save him. The best constellation for protection is Sagittarius, and the girl asked him to protect Lunit. He said that he would not allow his sign to be marred. And he shot an arrow from his bow. And Capricorn, who can use his power, will bring the Machion into the carriage and will guard it. Capricorn thought, it is very arrogant to use him as a guard. Aquarius asked to leave it to them. Now this is a difficult situation. Everything is transmitted through Manu, and she asked the girl to go forward. Thanks to them, she was able to quickly return, but the mana consumption was extremely high. After all, she summoned 3 constellations at once. At this moment, the prince asked Thisbe what about Lady Esther. Thisbe did not understand his question. What's wrong with Estelle? Is she really not here? Nobody really saw the girls here? The prince said that when Thisbe left, she ran after her. Didn't she really see her? The princess was surprised. She could not look around while she was summoning the constellation. Was Estelle really there? And the girl decided that she would have to meet the girl to find out. Thisbe said she didn't see her. Sora told His Highness to look for his partner himself. And at that moment, Sora hugged Thisbe tightly to himself. The prince told the Duke not to interfere in the conversation with Thisbe. Sora asked His Majesty to forgive him for his rudeness. Thisbe looked very tired, so he passed the conversation and showed disrespect to the crown prince. The girl asked the prince what he was talking about. Sora behaves this way because she is his fiance. The girl also turned to the prince and asked why he treated him like that. Brad said everything because he was not in a very good mood today. He seemed to be angry with the Duke for no reason. And the girl realized that now the best option is to just leave quickly. One reason why the prince is in such a bad mood. The girl decided that they would meet soon anyway. Then she could talk to her. The girl didn't want to talk one-on-one, so that there wouldn't be anyone nearby who could listen to their conversation. At that moment, Thisbe said that they had to go, and they asked the prince to look for Estelle's mission. And it's rude to leave your partner alone. Moreover, it is not known where the girl is, to be honest. Or maybe she needs help now. The prince looked at Thisbe moving away from him. Is the girl already leaving? After all, he thought there was something to talk to him about. Well, the princess didn't think so. She left and also called her fiancé to follow her. Sora pleased and said that he would take her mansion. The girl was very anxious that she would be escorted to the mansion. She quickly placed her hand on her fiancé's. Usually, she would have refused, but the carriage in which she arrived left with the Maholon. Therefore, she had no other choice. The girl thought about it. She wondered if her friend had already returned. Is everything okay with him? She was very worried about how the Maholon was feeling now. An assistant met the Duke and Princess at the mansion, and he told Sora that they returned very early. Sora asked the Lhasa, did something happen during his absence? Las, as if in thought, repeated the Duke's question once again. I thought a little, and the assistant said that the night pigeon cried a little. Sora asked if this was really so. And if so, that's a great job. He said it was time for them to go. Thisbe was very surprised. Was it really these two who came up with the assassination attempt on her friend? The assistant quickly bowed and said that he understood them. And at that moment, Thisbe noticed a wound on his assistant's hand. At first, she didn't understand what it was. His hand was bandaged and blood was visible. The girl went down the corridor and thought. Somehow this was all quite suspicious. And so she could not stand it and asked the assistant a question. Did he hurt his hand? Laz just laughed. Does she really mean that scratch on his arm? Pay attention to her. The young man said that sometimes she and the Duke spar, and some time ago he accidentally cut me. The girl said that everything was clear to her and she apologized for her questions. Laz said he would worry about it. Well, what made the girl very alarmed was that the bandage on her hand was clearly fresh. It looked like a fresh injury, which most likely was received recently. Thisbe, after thinking for a while, decided that she was clearly screwing herself over. Now she was worried about one question. How was the condition of her friend Manhwa? In the constellation Aquarius, she said that his condition had stabilized, and he should wake up soon. Capricorn made sure Luneth also returned home safely. Capricorn said that this body has not yet used 1/10 of its power. Thisbe said it was a great job, and she thanked the guys who helped her. Aquarius said that they had not been in the human world for a long time. They really liked it. It was fun. Next time, Aquarius asked to find this body too, and she will show something magnificent. Thisbe turned to the young man who stood in his place. She asked why he didn't leave. Sagittarius said that she entrusted him with security and told him to tell her if he saw anyone suspicious. Just like she said, someone wanted to attack the gray lunette. The girl rushed to Sagittarius and asked if he could see his face. He said that everything happened very, very quickly, and for this reason, he could not see the attacker's face. But there was one thing. He managed to wound him in the right hand. The princess quickly thought about it. If you think about it carefully, it was on the right hand that it was early. Could this mean that it was he who attacked in the car? Or is this just a coincidence? At this time, Macheon sighed and opened his eyes. He got up and sat on the bed. The young man grabbed his head. He had a very bad headache. The princess was glad that her friend had finally woken up. Nasha turned to the missus and asked where he was now. Thisbe told her friend that he was now in her room. He was brought here because he had not woken up for a long time. The young man understood everything. Well, at that moment, I already felt that there was some object in his mouth. He quickly spat it out of his mouth. He asked if this was her room, then how dare he be here? And Hours quickly covered his naked body with a blanket. The girl asked what was wrong this time. It was an emergency. She was simply forced to do so. The girl asked how he was feeling. Swallowtail quickly looked at his hands and body. If you think so, then they disappeared early. They are also silent. She found her and asked the princess what she did. The girl said that she became a constellation in her own way. Since she was calling them for the first time, the matter was risky. But everything went well. The princess asked the young men what happened to him then on the terrace. Was he really watching Estelle and Lunnet? The young man said that he was watching them and they attacked him sharply. He still doesn't understand what trick they used. They pinpointed his location even though he was hiding in the shadows. At that moment, the young man felt complete destruction. It was as if they had walked right through him. But if that were the case, he wouldn't be able to escape like that. Swallowtail sharply lowered his eyes. He said he was very ashamed, and the princess calmed him down and asked him not to talk like that. After all, he did everything he could. The young man shouted no. He said he only needed a few seconds. A little more and he would not have been able to hold his target. The princess looked at her friend in surprise. She turned to him and said that the most important thing in life is his life. And since everyone is alive and well, there is no reason to bow your head. The girl touched Mahi's face with her hands. However, if this happens in the future, it will be difficult to maintain the goal. However, this is not such a bad situation. It's not enough to see through the shadows. Considering the fact that they used the power of destruction, one could say that they already knew that he would be watching the lunette. We can conclude that the guy he saw that time and the guy who attacked him are the same person. However, if the princess guessed correctly, killing him was not his goal. Surprised at the princess, does she really think so too? Most likely he wanted to commit a crime and simply shift his blame onto the swallowtail. Therefore, he wounded him specifically so as to prevent him from escaping. But if everything had gone according to his plan, just the thought would give him goosebumps. This means that the criminal was very smart and planned his actions in advance. Moreover, the young man smiled and said that it was very wonderful that Thisbe was able to summon the constellation. He should have seen it. The books about mana and the divine power that he brought to her turned out to have their results. The girl knew that as the leader of the Information Guild, it was not difficult for him to obtain them. The young man asked how the calling of the constellations went. The princess said that based on her powers, the one that helped her the most was the grimoire from the auction. Isn't the main thing that he was useful? Either way, it was really great. The young man quickly jumped to his feet and had his shoes. He quickly threw on a white shirt. He was full of strength and energy. It's as if absolutely nothing happened yesterday. It seemed that no matter what temple he went to, he would not be able to receive such treatment. The girl told him that if he received powers, not everyone would be able to use them at the same level. After all, the power of calling is much more powerful than borrowing. Then it will be more difficult for the call to do so. It should also resonate well with the constellations. They say it's difficult because it consumes a lot of mana. However, the girl looked at the book that was lying on the table. The princess said she was fine. Therefore, Thisbe's unprecedented closeness to her mother is wonderful. Therefore, in the temple they believed that she was a saint. The girl thought about it after all. It was just an illusion. Mahi thought about it. It turns out that she can also use divine power. The princess confirmed this. Come to think of it, isn't that what they say Lady Calyx is who she is? A girl who meets the conditions has a large amount of mana and can use divine power. So if you put everything together, then she is a saint. The princess was a little stunned. She just snorted in response. After that, she laughed hard. Mahi makes her laugh. She didn't understand what he was talking about. Was she really a saint? Mahi asked her not to laugh. After all, it wasn't funny. He really thought so. Then the girl asked him questions. What does he think about Estelle? After all, she also considers herself a saint. The young man said that it might seem so. Well, this is somehow strange. However, Estelle has special abilities that Thisbe does not have. She truly is a saint. Something is wrong here. She can save this world. She was able to do this, and soon the empire was invaded by monsters born as a result of forbidden experiments. It seemed that the empire was destroyed because of the monsters, but a saint possessing sacred power destroyed them. Soon an army was created to oppose them. At this moment, Thisbe asked what happened next. Maybe it's because she read the novel a long time ago and didn't remember the ending. Since it was the main character, it was as if everything ended in victory. Thank you, what should he do next? Shouldn't they catch the culprit now? The princess actually thought, Sora's surroundings are suspicious. According to Sagittarius, the criminal's palm was pierced by an arrow. Assistant Sora also had a wound on his palm. And at that moment, Mahi shouted, Is this really true? Does this really mean... Does the princess want to say that Duke Sora is the culprit? Well, for some reason, I really didn't want to believe it. Either way, it makes sense now. But this is impossible. Doesn't the Duke love Thisbe? If he truly loved her, then most likely he would not have acted this way. Or perhaps he was trying to deal with those who posed a threat to them, and it was unclear. The princess understood what Mahi wanted to tell her, but he is her fiance. He trusts her, so she cannot rush to such conclusions. He grabbed his neck. He said everything was fine. He was willing to wait and see. That she is weak only in front of her fiancé. Sora put his hand on the table. He told his assistant that he missed one target. Making a mistake is not allowed. Does this mean the plan failed? How can he now accept this fact? Sora asked the assistant to answer for this. Las wanted to say it the way he said it. At first, he wanted to seriously injure the Zodiac's head so as not to get in the way. But everything didn't go according to plan. The one who should have died simply disappeared. Las said everything was correct. Sora looked carefully into the eyes of his assistant. Las won't lie to him. It was impossible for someone of class level to miss a hit, and a man who was on the verge of death could so easily disappear. It turns out there was someone third there then. Sora said until the assistant's hand is completely healed, he is on probation. And now he asked him to leave. Las thanked him for taking pity on him. He himself would never have thought that the last goal would be so difficult to cope with. He wanted to finish the job perfectly and give it to him. But in the end, everything turned out completely wrong, and today he could not give away this ring. Sora sat and examined the ring. It was Marietta's cursed ring. This ring was purchased on the black market while trying to get rid of the lunette. It has a very attractive story. They say that she killed her lover with her own hands, and if the curse is true, then in the last minutes, she will be there. He really wanted those eyes to look only at him. You wanted this from their first meeting until now. At that moment, the young man slammed the box with the ring. Several years ago, events took place in the Duchy of Salvador. Someone asked the lady what was the point of this. The young duke has social anxiety. He just needs to build connections now. He can't give up all this. The boy says he doesn't like people, but he's still a child. The head of the Salvador family was Vanessa Armand Salvatore. She asked her uncle not to force him too much. She didn't put pressure on him. The woman said that she was the mother of this child. As he grows up, it will become easier for him to communicate with others. And the woman came with her handkerchief to her mouth. She was very worried about her boy. At that moment, the little boy stood and looked through the crack in the door at his mother. Due to the illness of the head of the family, the future was difficult to predict. There was only one young heir in the family. This is an excellent situation to become a victim for minor nobles who only care about their own gain. The young master was already concerned that the head of the family was not feeling well. He believed that she was trying to control the duke, who somehow married his child. It wasn't surprising that he avoided people so much. And the children asked the young master if he liked staying at home every day. The boy looked at his uncle in surprise. I didn't say that he heard that St. Calix will come to the temple today. How about you visit him? The uncle said that all the sworn ones would be chained to her. The young master would be able to take a walk in peace. This was not a very good place for the young master, but we must somehow force him to leave the house. The boy stood as if confused. He was thinking about something. The boys really wanted to go outside because Turkish also took care of him. He didn't know what to say. I thought for a while. The boy said okay. When they arrived at the temple, there were a large number of people around. The boy had never seen so many people. Did they all really come to see the saint? Let's say a girl came up and asked why he was empty-handed. Didn't he get food from the temple? The boy was surprised. The boy did not understand what kind of food he was supposed to get. You girl explained that if he eats their food, his body will be cleansed and God's grace will settle in his body. The boy thought about it. If he lets his mother eat this food, maybe then she can recover. And the boy approached the temple worker. He asked if he could also have the holy food. The man immediately handed the young man the sacred bread. He said that they have a lot of holy food in the temple. The boy thanked him and brought the food home. It would be good if his mother came here with him. After all, he must give this food to her. The worker seems to be in his thoughts. He said that this food should never be taken outside. If you take this food outside the temple, it is tantamount to stealing divine grace. The man said that you should definitely eat this food here, and he asked if everyone understood him. The children stood and chewed. And the boy who came to the temple for the first time hid the food from his back. He knew that he couldn't do this, and he really wanted to take this food to his mother. And he quickly ran. He stole this food, but he couldn't do that. The boy believed that this was the only way his mother could get better. At that moment, he ran around the corner and saw a girl in front of him. Unwittingly, he collided with this girl, and the sacred food fell onto the floor. The girl just gasped and fell to the ground. She couldn't believe her eyes. The girl quickly picked up this holy food. She asked if this was really holy food from the temple. The boy did not know what to tell him and hesitated. The girl said he couldn't take it outside. How could he get him here? The boy was upset. He realized that he was caught. He was caught with sacred food on the street, and now the temple can hold his family accountable. Mom will be very disappointed when she finds out what he stole. And if everything turns out as he suggested, then she will simply hate you. And it's his fault. At that moment, the girl saw that the boy was very upset and began to cry. She was surprised to see this. And the boy, in turn, asked the girl not to talk about this incident to adults. The girl asked him not to cry. She promised not to tell anyone about it. And if he makes noise, they will be caught together. And the girl quickly raised her finger to her mouth. Match was surprised if they really would catch him. And the girl said that she just ran away. The boy asked if they would scold her later when they found her. The girl said everything was fine. Everyone thinks she's weak, so she can say she just rested a little. The boy understood that this was a lie, and if she gets caught, they will be disappointed. At this moment, the girl thought. She asked what was wrong with that. She said if he's worried about the expectations others have of him, there's no need to try to live up to them. The main thing for a person is the person himself and no one else. The young man took the girl's hands in his own. He said everything was fine. He was very irritated by these adults' lectures. The most important thing is him. No one has ever told him this before. When his father died, Mom became weak due to illness. Everyone had high hopes for her. He does not have to live up to the expectations of others. The girl once again repeated to the boy that you need to do what your heart desires, and he looked carefully at her eyes. Only now did he remember the story of St. Calix, which he heard before coming here. A few hours ago, the boy was riding in a carriage, and his uncle asked him if he had heard anything about St. Calix. The uncle said that adults are surprised that she acts more mature than other adults. The boy was surprised if this was true. So she is St. Calix. This is Tisby Louise Calix. In any case, what should they do now? He's a boy, but he can't eat it anymore. The girl handed the food to the boy and told him to take it. The boy admitted that he was going to give it to his mother. But if you can't eat it now he doesn't know where to put this bread. The girl seemed to be talking to the boy. He decided to steal some bread. Most likely the boy was very hungry. And now he is so upset because the food fell on the floor. Since this happened because of him, he was ready to solve this problem. And the boy collected his hands full of loaves of bread. It was too much. At that moment, a girl approached him and asked if he had gained too much. She said everything was fine. And she said that this is the food he most likely needs most. At that moment, the children heard someone shout, "Lady Saint, where are you?" The girl quickly turned around and said that now she urgently needed to leave. She also asked the boy to keep their meeting a secret. And she quickly ran down the corridor. The boy followed me with his eyes and wondered if he had just communicated with a saint. and the boy thought someday they will definitely meet again. He followed the running girl with his eyes. And at that moment, the princess was holding bread in her hand and smiling mysteriously. A maid approached her from behind and said that most likely something good had happened to her. After all, that's why she smiles so much looking at this bread. She told everything that she needed to go to the temple and get bread. The maid was combing the princess's hair, and she held the bread in her hands and looked at it carefully. She hoped he was okay. Looking at the bread, she remembered the child she met as a child, and it was reminiscent of the good old days. She also often went out to buy food with her younger brothers and sisters. They said that it was holy and should not be brought outside. They themselves periodically held events to gain public support, and they gave people baked bread. This bread was called holy food. Of course, it was ordinary bread. They are truly holy food. This was a lie to prevent theft. This was important for the priests. The princess asked Emily why it was very quiet in the mansion. Did something really happen? The maid fell silent and quickly looked away. The princess asked if she was hiding something. The princess assured the maid that whatever she said to her now would remain a secret, so she could talk about it freely. The maid said, even though the head of the family told her not to talk, she will tell her. But this will be their little secret. The princess was surprised that grandfather really ordered not to tell her. In fact, on the day we went to the imperial palace banquet, the elders came to us to discuss the issue of registering the saint. The head of the family was unhappy with this. He even returned his sword and drove the elders away. They were ready to let Estelle register her name no matter what happened. That's what he said. The princess did not understand what this meant. She couldn't understand it since last time. Why can't Estelle be registered? Why did he make this decision? Does he really not care? Most likely, this is exactly what is happening. The maid shouted that it was a misunderstanding, even though the head seems harsh. But grandfather cares about her very much. But does this make sense? The princess was surprised to hear such words. Do they really care about grandfathers? Princess Calyx is moving towards humiliation. But the criminal has not been caught for a long time. From now on, they can investigate using the name Calyx. Grandfather will reveal the truth about these deaths. After all, she is his only granddaughter, and he was ready to do anything to protect her. The princess was stunned. She would never have thought that her grandfather could say such things about her. She doesn't count anymore. There are also charges, so that's just the name of the family. But why is he doing this? Is she really that dear to him? And the princess thought. Grandfather's actions were unexpected, but protecting her identity is only a temporary measure. And the princess was not ready to sit like that and fold her arms. She was ready to conduct her own investigation and find the real criminal. And so the crown prince raised his cup of tea. He asked why Thisbe came to him. What goal does she pursue? The princess sat down opposite the prince. She asked Killian to tell her directly. Wasn't it he who provoked her back then in the banquet hall because he wanted her to come to him? The prince said that, strangely enough, she succumbed to this provocation of his. The princess asked what their former saint was planning. Does she trust him to reveal her plan? Or maybe he is the real criminal? The prince asked if this was the only conclusion she came to after 10 days of thinking, and she said that perhaps he was the criminal, and he invited the girl to grab herself by the collar and ask the same question. But the princess was in no hurry to do this. She was sure of one thing. The fact that she cannot find traces means that the status of the criminal is higher than her. The prince smiled. The girl said that he would get a lot if she loses. And she asked the prince to answer her. Is he a real criminal? Killian raised his head proudly and remained silent. He was in no hurry to say anything. They sat on the sofas opposite each other. After thinking a little, the prince asked if she really thought that he was a criminal. The girl said that at the moment he is the main suspect. Basically just hacked. He didn't expect to hear this. And the princess sat and silently looked into his eyes. He said he's been around her longer than anyone else, but does she really think that he is a criminal? There was something between them, who had been together for a long time. Light, and if she began to be suspicious of him, there is one reason. And this is the reason. Sor Armin Salvatore. He must have deceived Thisbe with his beautiful swords. After all, only 3 years have passed. Everything has changed since this guy showed up. Every emperor in history had a political partner. The prince told the girl that he hoped that Calyx would be her partner. The prince asked the girl not to rush into an answer. He asked her to think carefully and weigh whether she agreed to stay by his side. The prince held her hand. They kept him quiet. But after a while, there was no answer. He heard about their engagement too late, and then he realized that Thisbe had decided to leave him. It was not surprising that even in such a situation she did not look for him. It was exactly the same as that time. Has she really decided to leave him again? Basically, he was very angry. He repeated her name. He knew that she was very greedy. However, he also knew how much effort she had put in. She won't ruin her life because of envy, because he knows her very well. He was sure that she was not a criminal. Moreover, now it doesn't matter at all whether he is guilty, but whether he brought it himself or not. The girl didn't understand what was important then, that she cannot reveal the truth on her own, and the prince extended his hand to her. It was impossible to remain silent when something like this happened, even when she goes out in public, behind the scenes to clear herself of accusations. But the criminal has still not been caught, and this is beyond our capabilities. Thisbe looked at the principal and said that he was very smart. Everything was right. This is something that can't even be resolved. I haven't decided to get down to business. That's why she needs his help. Now she needs his help more than ever. She asked to help her. The clan's face became very serious. Apparently, he didn't understand what this meant. After this, the prince laughed. He said that while he was alive, the moment had come when she bowed her head to him, and he was ready to help her. After all, this is her request to him. The princess silently thought that the prince could laugh as much as he wanted. She knew that in order to catch the criminal, she had to set a trap. And if she doesn't want to immediately rush into battle, she needs to find a mercenary. She needs to involve people with voice and influence, a third party that will win either way, as if it will lose or win. The only person who fits this is Killian. The empire's largest annual festival is Konkoku. Under the leadership of the crown prince, important figures from different parts of the country gather. They come to watch the holy torch raising ceremony at the top of the sanctuary tower. Thisbe should have taken this chance. If Killian is the real criminal, she will be able to obtain proof at this ceremony. And if he is not guilty, she will be able to use him to help you catch the real criminal. If this happens, then this time she will definitely be able to catch the criminal. What if this plan fails and she becomes the real criminal? What should she do then? After all, this is exactly what Killian did in the original novel. He will increase his status by punishing her accused of a crime. Of course she will. Well, take the bait. But it turned out to be easier than she thought. At this moment, he said that before that he would like to ask, does her fiance believe her and her innocence? The princess said of course she believes. Why would he start talking about Sora? Didn't she say so herself? The reason for her suspicion was that the criminal must be someone who occupies a higher position than her. If so, then Litter should also be a prime suspect. The princess asked that this talk be enough. After all, her fiancé is dirty. She was generally unpleasant that the prince was now insulting him. The prince asked the girl again why she did not doubt him. Why does she believe him so sacredly? Isn't it doubtful that the one who shows such trust in her doesn't show any involvement in this matter at all? Thisbe said that she was still his fiancé. He is not obliged to speak on her behalf, because she is not a member of the Salvador family. And this time Killian was completely right. So far she suspected only those around him. She didn't take Sora seriously as a criminal. For her, he is just a person who was with her even in the most difficult times. It was very difficult for her to suspect such a person. She didn't want to doubt him in any way right now. These are rather sad words for a friend who is now openly suspected. She feels it is not fair, and she should have lived as good a life as Sora. The prince couldn't even believe that she didn't even suspect him. This has been bothering him for a long time. He didn't know with what words he deceived his bride, but she didn't need it. She just needs an influential person who can share her. And this is the prince, not Sora. He is the most suitable partner to satisfy Thisbe's ambitions. But for some reason, a man who is not suitable for her took his place, and the princess believes him unconditionally. While the prince is her old friend, and she continues to communicate with someone who is completely unsuitable for her. He was ready to help her get rid of it, and he predicted that he would repeat once again that he would definitely help her with this. But he wasn't going to help her just like that. Thisbe knew that he, of course, would not help just like that, and she asked him what he wanted. The prince said that he wants Thisbe to break Sora's help by Armin Salvatore. The princess was stunned to hear this. The prince sat and looked attentively at the princess. This was his only condition. The princess connected from the sofa. The prince is now in his right mind. By the way, he can set this as a condition. It would be much more profitable for him to demand the right to extract minerals in the east, or part of the business monopolized by Calyx, or at least a private army. What can he gain from breaking her engagement? The prince sat silent. He thought for a moment. After thinking a little, the prince said, he doesn't want to see that she is connected with this Salvatore. The princess was very surprised. In her mind, she wondered what Killian was up to. He straightened up and straightened his shoulders proudly. He looked into the princess's eyes boldly and carefully. Night has fallen. The princess was traveling to her palace in a carriage. I was thinking about breaking off my engagement with my fiance. In any case, she planned to escape to another country, and someday she would have to do it anyway. She will simply be forced to break off the engagement. Well, what is the reason that he wanted this himself? Although she was completely unaware of what his intentions were. But in order to get his cooperation, she simply must accept his terms. And now she simply has no other choice. The only thing left for her, if the dirty line is with her and who is rumored to be accused of murder, then his reputation will also suffer. Therefore, breaking off the engagement as soon as possible will be beneficial not only for her, but also for him. The carriage arrived and the princess went outside. A man immediately approached her. He said that the house was very noisy and lively, and also asked where she had been. The princesses had very surprised eyes. She didn't understand what this man was doing here. Her own person stood in front of her, playing a number, and he was the leader of the Calyx elders. The count strongly insists on authenticity as a saint. In the original work, he approved of Thisbe's exile, but the fact that he appeared here in person was alarming. Most likely, this has something to do with Estelle. The princess bowed gallantly and said that she went to the imperial palace on business. The girl also asked if something had happened in her absence. The count curled his lips into a smile. He said that the world is very fascinated by history and rumors about it, and at this time she allows herself to freely leave such events. Or maybe it's good that this childishness remains in her. Maybe this fact is what makes the world talk about her. The princess stood in the city with her head raised. After thinking a little, she told the count, what the world says about her is that she admires and learns from her grandfather's liveliness. He prefers to stay away from unreasonable old people who, by showing their greed, only enrich themselves at the expense of others. The count did not expect to hear such words. He quickly shouted, and he asked if she was insulting him now. But the girl said that this was absolutely not true. She was only saying those who do not serve as examples of noble nobles. And the princess laughed. He thought she was just some impudent girl. Does she really not understand what is happening now? The count began to scream because Estelle assures that she is not a saint. The princess was surprised. Does Estelle really say that? She refuses not only to be given the status of saint, but also to be baptized. Why did young people who were previously quiet and calm become like this? Most likely there was a quarrel between them in the banquet hall. The count asked how Thisbe was going to take responsibility for this situation. The princess was now thinking about why Esther claims that she is not a saint. After all, until now she accepted this fact and did not deny it. Did she actually see the princess summon the constellation that day? Perhaps it was true. She followed her out of the banquet hall. In this case, everything becomes clear. She took her for a real saint and gave up her place. However, if she does not recognize herself as a saint, Estelle will not be able to awaken the saint until the catastrophe approaches. Yes, this is a high natural proximity to Monet. Therefore, through the ritual of baptism, she must increase her affinity to mana on a permanent basis. Estelle simply needs strength to withstand the approaching disaster. Without moving far from the carriage, the princess told the coachman to get ready to go to the Iller mansion right away. She must see and talk to Estelle in person. The count was stunned. Will he really go to her in person now? The count said that the princess does not yet know the whole situation. Society began to call the princess a rare villain. Even if she tries to do something, it will only worsen the public opinion of her. The princess said that is why she is trying to help. The count did not understand what she was talking about. The princess said she was at the center of the problem. Therefore, it is she who must put an end to the problems. Otherwise, her bad reputation will immediately be on people's lips. If the Count understood everything, then she will probably go. Suddenly, someone shouted and ordered Thisbe to stop, which the girl now heard was a stranger. It was grandfather's voice. He couldn't let his granddaughter meet Estelle. The Count said that it seemed that the princess wanted to break his ban. The Count said that most likely the princess did not understand that she was the successor to the Calyx. Grandfather told the Count he could go. After all, this man is interfering with his conversation with his granddaughter. Recently, he heard a rumor that the head of the family was protecting, but he had always remained indifferent to her, and now he so abruptly took her side. And the Count realized that now he needed to leave, and he asked to forgive him for his bad manners. He decided to leave the grandfather and granddaughter alone and let them talk calmly. The grandfather knew that his granddaughter had something to tell him, and he invited her to talk. Grandfather turned to the princess, and she angrily asked her grandfather if he too believed that she had threatened Miss Estelle. You said it didn't matter at all. Life will definitely bite her, no matter how short it gets. At such moments, it is better not to give the world any reason. And if she flounders, evil rumors will continue to spread. But the princess did not want to leave everything as it was. She was ready to meet in person and persuade her. If after their meeting, then the evil rumors will disappear on their own. But then the grandfather asked if his granddaughter could not persuade Estelle. What to do then? It is obvious what the consequences will be if he lets her go now. The grandfather asked if his granddaughter really believed that he would allow her to go out. His answer was unchanged. Too many years have passed for him to dare to call himself her guardian. But now his granddaughter is in danger. What can he do in this situation? Just hide Thisbe under the protection of the family. The princess was stunned. She asked her grandfather why. Well, grandfather didn't understand her question. The princess repeated, why is he protecting her only now? It's not that difficult compared to when she was little, even when she thought she couldn't take it anymore. When she was a child, it was painful and difficult for her. There was no one next to her. She didn't know why her grandfather was protecting her. And she turned to him. She said he never cared until now. It wasn't that she didn't trust her grandfather from the start. The maid was taken away after giving her a pincushion containing a poisoned needle, and grandfather ordered the servants to keep their mouths shut. However, he never came to her when she was lying sick in bed, even despite his kindness now, when before he was indifferent. The days when her grandfather continued to avoid ignoring her one after another continuously. And remember this, she herself, without realizing it, began to doubt his sincerity. The grandfather looked at his granddaughter and was silent. He understood that she was angry with him. Well, if he comes forward now, the family will no longer be able to help her. If he was going to protect her, he should have started doing it a little earlier. If only he had been kind to her earlier. She wouldn't even think about leaving this place. And the granddaughter turned away from her grandfather. The princess walked away. Killian suddenly demands to break off the engagement. Grandfather never lets her go and suddenly begins to protect her. Estelle insists that she is not a saint, and how such events happen one after another. This doesn't mean she doesn't have assumptions. After all, she is not the same Thisbe as in the novel. The story said that after committing the crime, Killian and Almus turn away from her. But when she was little, she threw eggs from the carriage, and then he learned her real character. Therefore, their relationship changed. And perhaps her grandfather's attitude towards her also changed due to the influence of something in her behavior. It wasn't that she didn't understand it. The princess did not understand one thing, why her grandfather was showing and changing his attitude towards her right now. Since childhood, she had already formed vague thoughts about the desire to go somewhere far away. But on the other hand, she always wanted to stay here. After one's rebirth, it is impossible to know exactly the content of the story, the plot that developed in the book. Perhaps even after Estelle appears. Can live like Lady Calyx? So she thought, what if she wasn't someone? And if you are kinder to others, everything will be fine. But what about Almus and Killian? And also her grandfather, who had never hugged her in his life. The friend who turned away from her at the moment when she most wanted to trust him. Of these two people, she was determined to escape from here. She lived with this plan all these years. She thought that she had already forgotten everything. The girl randomly looked for a way into the room, but it was dark around. And she still gets upset inside when she thinks about that day. This happened 3 years ago, on the day of Killian's inauguration ceremony as crown prince. She knew that Killian would become the crown prince. Well, seeing it like this gives her a different feeling. After the crown was placed on the prince's head, he turned and looked into Thisbe's eyes. Perhaps this is because she considers him a close person. Each emperor had a political partner. Killian kissed the princess's hand, and he told the girl that he hoped that she would be this person, instead of the empress which Killian offered her. And today she is here to give the answer. If it turns out that even in the future it will be revealed that she is not a saint, but it will still be with her. A person who sees her as an ordinary person, not a saint. Thisbe thought that with such a person next to her, she wouldn't even have to leave this place. The prince, hearing her answer, was not at all surprised. I knew that everything would be like this. He was sure of it. The prince stood proudly with his hands folded in front of him. The princess walked along the corridor. Her soul was tormented by doubts and many thoughts. After all, there were rumors that His Highness had a special relationship with Miss Calix, and the princess was surprised by this. Does His Highness really like her? The maids and courtiers whispered. Did everyone really think that he liked this saint? After all, there is one version that he simply wants to marry her for the sake of interest in the empire. If her usefulness declines, his love and favor towards her will also end that very moment. And the princess was very hurt by these words. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. A situation similar to that period is being repeated again. When she was still a little girl standing behind the doors with her palm closed, as she listened to those little boys talking. When she was little, she was so scared and surprised that she ran away and didn't say anything. It was a very interesting conversation. After all, she is no longer the child she was then. And the princess asked to tell her this story in more detail. The girl smiled sweetly. The men immediately fell silent. This conversation has nothing to do with His Highness. But the princess refused to believe it. She remembered them well. After all, these men were close to the crown prince, the eldest son of the Everjani knightly family, and the second man the eldest son of an influential trading family. They are both the prince's closest associates. Well, they were little boys then, and now they are already two matured young men. The princess remembered well the words they had spoken in childhood. She knew these words were not to be taken lightly. And then the princess asked the Marquis of Everjani if he could give something to Killian. Everyone stood there confused. What if the prince really only sees her as a means? In this case, they will never be able to be together. The princess didn't know what to do. She quickly left the room and loudly closed the door behind her. The men were stunned. If Highness finds out about this, then they will all be in trouble. After thinking a little, they decided that they just needed to keep their mouths shut. It was as if nothing had happened at all. It was as if this conversation had never happened at all. It was night outside. The full moon rolled into the sky. The prince was in his room. In his hand was a glass of red wine. In all likelihood, he was waiting for the princess. But for some reason, she was late. She came to the inauguration ceremony, and he thought he would hear her answer today. And since she's late, maybe she needs a little more time. At this time, the princess was sitting on the floor and thinking. The thoughts in her head did not allow her to rest. She couldn't think of anything else. After that day, she did not leave the house. And on one of those days, when she had difficulty listening to the news from Mahalan, the following happened. The events took place in the prince's palace. At one point, the stone on her bracelet became active, and the princess heard the voice of Maha. He asked her if she was really going to stay at home. At that moment, the princess continued to sit on the floor, covering her head with a blanket. She said she was tired of everything, and she decided not to date anyone for some time. She didn't even want to see her friend Mahi. The young man was surprised, but if this continues, he won't be able to do anything about it. After thinking a little, her friend said that it looked like her fiance would soon come to the capital. Of course, not 100% of the information. Well, at least everyone in the city is talking about it. And he asked the princess if she had heard about it. The princess was seriously surprised. Of course she hadn't heard about it. She once again asked her friend to repeat it. It was as if she had been struck by lightning. What should she do now? After all, she planned not to leave the house for a while. She had absolutely no idea that her fiancé might return at this time. Since Sora was finishing up things for his family, they could not meet. He was very busy all this time. No matter how condescendingly and kindly he treated the princess in the original work, she should be careful until they meet in person. After all, She has absolutely no idea what could happen. It was a warm summer day outside. Sora entered the room and wanted to ask the princess for forgiveness. She was sitting at the table and most likely had been waiting for him for a long time. The man was embarrassed because he was very late. The princess sat and looked into his eyes in surprise. You could say she was even scared when he came in and shouted. The young man was embarrassed and blushed. Apparently, he was very loud and scared the princess. The girl said that it was okay because she had just arrived too. At this, Thisbe laughed cheerfully. Sora's face changed. He stood and silently looked at the princess. After a few seconds, he looked away. He said that if the princess did not wait for him very long, then that was just fine. They sat down at the table and began their tea party. At first, this status was obligatory. Well, the more they talked, the more the princess, without noticing, internally relaxed from his innocent and sincere behavior. There were cakes in the box. Unlike conversations with aristocrats, from which she was always tired, she liked communicating with her fiance. On the day when her fiance met us, her soul felt light and simple. That day, he gave her a gift. There she stood near the closed door. But she had a lot of thoughts, and looking back, she understood. Sora consoled her every time she had a hard time. There were times when she really missed him. Although it's a little late now, the girl still decided to send him a letter on message paper. The papers lay on the table, and the girl quickly looked down at him. It was still the same magical roll of paper that quickly transmitted information. When she looked at the package, she saw that it was sparkling. It was only when her fiancé texted her. Has he really already left a letter for her? And the girls became very curious. The princess took the package in her hands and opened it to read. There really was a letter on the paper. Into their own hands, I mean they. While drinking a cup of tea after dinner, he suddenly remembered her. On the day and in the first meeting, they drank exactly the same tea. The princess sat down and hurried to write the young man an answer. She was also just remembering their first meeting with him. It was the day when she first came to the capital. Well, that's 3 years ago. And the young man asked if she remembered this. The letter arrived very quickly. The young man did not forget a single minute spent next to her. Sora wrote the message very quickly. I didn't have time to answer him. And so the girl asked. Their first meeting was in a cafe on the outskirts of the capital. Or maybe she's confused about something. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The interior of the cafe was decorated with queens and lilies. And the princess quickly returned to the day when they first met. The young man remembered everything in great detail. And then the princess asked the young man if he remembered how confused he was that day. Sora didn't expect at all that she remembered it too. The princess realized that at that moment she had embarrassed her fiancé, and she felt kind of happy about it. How can he not remember this? She asked him if he liked cake, but there was no answer, and he simply asked if she liked flowers. There was some awkward situation when they asked each other questions. After a while, the young man said that he loved cakes. And after that, there was a sudden pause. The young man blushed, he looked away, and after thinking a little, she added that he loves Mont Blanc cake. Sora that he was very inexperienced then, when he was first told about his engagement to the girl his family had chosen. He was a little surprised, but when he found out that this was the same saint he had pictured in his dreams, he simply could not contain his joy at that moment. He remembered this little girl whom he first encountered when he wanted to take the light and bread out of the temple. And now a beautiful girl is already sitting in front of him. Now he can immediately answer her questions. And at that moment, the girl asked Sora to answer why he wrote her a letter today. And these lines again embarrassed Sora. He thought for a moment. At that moment, he did not write anything, but thought. After some time, there was no answer. Most likely, the young man at this moment is thinking deeply about the answer. Apparently, he didn't understand the princess's joke at all, and she went a little far. And at that moment, the princess decided to write to the young man that it was a joke. But at that moment, the litter had already begun to write a response. This is because he is very worried about her. The princess's eyes widened. She didn't expect to hear such an answer from him. This surprised the princess a little. After that, she lowered her gaze. Her cheeks flushed red. These words were so pleasant. These were exactly the words that she so wanted to hear at that moment. Even if he couldn't help her, he just wanted to know how she was feeling. It turns out that he was very worried about her. And the princess really missed her friend Sora. She really wanted to see him, and at that very moment. And the girl said that after a while she would go to the garden. She wrote to Sora that as soon as he heard singing, he should go out, and for her sake himself. After all, now the princess is forbidden to leave the house, and it would be very difficult to leave the residence. But today is just a wonderful day for calling fish, and it would be stupid not to take advantage of such a moment. The girl went outside and raised her hands. She wanted to call upon the zodiac Pisces. And then, in an instant, a fish appeared. She said in surprise that she had not been in the human world for a long time. The fish said that the princess had no idea how long she had been waiting for her call. The fish swam closer to the princess and asked how she could help her. She stood and looked carefully at 3 fish circling in a circle. After thinking a little, the girl said that she needed her ability to connect. She would like to go somewhere. Sora thought about it. Does she really want to come to the Salvadorans right now? The sun has long since set. Due to the strict Duke Calix, a curfew is most likely imposed. However, the young man thought about it. Sora called the butler to his place. A middle-aged man approached the young man. I even asked the butler to stop the servants from roaming the corridors. But he knew that the princess never leaves like the wind. And he quickly walked along the corridor. Most likely this means that she will actually come here. Will she really come here just to see him? The young man quickly opened the doors and froze in surprise. He stood with his mouth open and could not say anything. Right in front of him in the garden, Thisbe was sitting on a bench. The young man was simply surprised to see her. The cape fell from her shoulders. The wind blew my hair, and the girl sat on a bench and sang. She was so carried away by the song that she even closed her eyes. Hearing the door open, the princess quickly opened her eyes and stopped singing. She asked her fiance if he liked the serenade. Sora stood in front of the princess. The serenade was simply magnificent, and the young man quickly and gallantly knelt down in front of the princess. He said that everything was so wonderful, it was like it was a dream. The young man knelt down, took the princess's hand in his own and kissed it. Ars said that he was in a hurry to get ready. Well, he had very little time to make her feel as comfortable as possible when visiting. The princess quickly threw her cape over her shoulders and was silent. Sora understood without words that the princess was apparently frozen. He quickly took off his jacket and threw it over the girl's shoulders. It's just cold here, so initially she needs to get dressed. The room has just started to warm up, so the air here is still cold. The girl said that she did not blame him for this at all since she appeared here suddenly. There was already a fireplace in the room. The fireplace crackled logs and radiated warmth throughout the room. And the young man asked the princess to sit down near the fireplace, and he will immediately bring you something to drink. The princess sat down near the fireplace and thanked the quarrel for her concern. As soon as I found her, a fish appeared near the girl. She was very surprised why this man did not ask how she ended up here, or he asked how she got here without a cart. The girl would try to explain her skill. Well, since the young man didn't ask about it at all, there was no need to explain anything. The young man didn't ask anything and simply accepted her pleasantly. He definitely wants to ask something. Or maybe he just cares about her. It was such a nice feeling when they cared about someone. After all, she has not felt either love or care for you since childhood. This was foreign to her. And the girl quickly thanked the constellation Pisces for the opportunity to find herself next to her beloved. The fish swam happily and said that she would always come to her aid. If you ever need anything, the princess must remember that she has a fish, so she can call her at any time. And now her groom has already returned to the princess with a glass in his hand. The young man presented the girl with a glass and said that this liquid would help her warm up. The girl invited the young man to sit next to him, too. After all, he was fussing a lot right now. At this time, the door opened and the courtiers told the Duke that they had brought what he asked them for, and it was just in time. The Duke gave the command to bring in the things he asked for. And the servants entered the room. The young man was carrying several boxes. A girl walked behind and carried a bouquet of flowers. Personally, I went up to the princess and told her that she had brought her a blanket. She will take care of her outerwear. The second servant brought the girl alcohol and a light dessert. The princess was simply surprised. She was very pleased with such care, and she asked the groom what it was. The young man sat next to the girl and looked at her carefully. And the young man said that for what it was, the lady stayed here for a while, something was missing. So he prepared to prepare all these things so that Thisbe would feel calm. Sora asked Thisbe if she liked everything. The princess said that she was simply delighted and very comfortable being here. And the girl said that she could even stay here to live forever if he offered it to her. Sora did not expect to hear this from the princess. Everything was covered in paint. He said that he prepared all this with only them in mind. He didn't know whether it would happen today or after a while, but he really wanted her to come here again. That's why there are so many different things here. For now, he just wanted to enjoy the company of his fiancée. He was very glad that she was here, and the young man laughed merrily. She looked at her fiancé with some kind of surprised look. She asked if she could take it all. Sora said, of course. He prepared all this for a reason. The princess asked if he was giving her all these decorations. There were rings, bracelets, and a necklace on the table. The groom said that there are. Naturally, he gives her all these gifts. The princess looked around, and her gaze fell on the picture. She said that she really liked this picture too, and also all the books that are on the shelves. The young man said that tomorrow he would give the command that all the books be packed and transported to the princess. At that moment, the girl picked up a teddy bear. She asked if he would give her this toy. He was very glad that the princess liked this toy. The princess was simply checking on her fiancé. No matter what she asked, he never refused her. Has he really decided to give her everything she asks for? She said everything correctly. He will give everything she wants if it helps him comfort her. He said that she could take absolutely everything from him. The princess was very surprised. How can he say that if he doesn't know what she can ask of him? What if this request becomes completely impossible to fulfill? Sora said that the girl could ask him for anything. She can ask him for his status, wealth, and if he even wants him. And they clasped their hands. Sora leaned close to the princess and looked into her eyes. He said he would give her everything. Well, the girl always took a step back, and he really wanted to get close to her. The girl turned away and quickly walked away. She walked without looking back. It always seemed to Sora that she would only move away from her. The young man extended his hand to the girl. He wanted to stop her. His face was worried. But now, at the most difficult moment, she came to him. And here he sits, holding her hands in his. Something he still couldn't say, and now he had such an opportunity. He quickly pressed her hand to his chest. He didn't want to miss her. Therefore, she can ask him for anything. The girl looked into his eyes and turned to him. At some point, she felt like she wanted to give up everything and rely on him. For this unconditional affection, for care. Even now, and she wanted to choose words so as not to hurt the quarrel. If she waits a little, he will simply follow her. And the girl touched her fiancé's face. It became very pleasant, and he closed his eyes. But there was one thing. And the girl imagined the moment when he was sitting in prison. She exhaled in thought. She quickly removed her hand from his face and asked her fiancé for forgiveness. She couldn't prevent the original's tragedy. This is simply impossible. Change this. Sora was surprised. Why did she say that? The girl said everything because she was not enough, vice versa. There is no one who supports her more than him. She thought that this would be the case. And Sora shouted, why did she decide that? The girl quickly shouted the name Sora. The princess said that her fiancé was a very good man, and that's why she wished him happiness. The young man was simply upset. He didn't expect the girl to tell him that. She said that when everything is fine, even if she doesn't rely on him, their relationship can be good, but now the situation is bad. If in such a situation she expects something from him, she absolutely cannot be sure that she is not using it to escape. But if this situation improves, then they will think about this relationship again. The girl looked and was silent. The young man understood everything. What is she talking about? The events took place on the Count's estate. Sora looked at the glass. The only thing that makes him happy is holding her hand, and now she is protecting him from his own happiness. This is unfair. The young man quickly turned around and called his class assistant for help. He asked to see the person with whom he spoke last time. Sora said he needed to meet the renegades again. They were already right there, and ready to talk. And now dawn has arrived. The sun came out outside. The princess woke up in her bed and touched her forehead with her hand. Yesterday was really dangerous. How could she even think about using her fiance in such a situation? In this situation, she is no different from Killian. Well, you can't do that, you can't. The girl sighed tiredly. Besides, she had never seen her fiancé Sora so disappointed, and she remembered his words. When the situation improves, then maybe she will think about this relationship again. She could not refuse such a request, so she agreed. But perhaps she will leave this place soon, and by doing so, she will only give him unnecessary hope. But is it worth doing this with Sora? At that moment, the maid looked into the room and asked if the lady had already woken up. There was a letter in front of the princess. However, thanks to yesterday's events, she was able to definitely decide on this. Thisbe invited the maid to come in. The girl brought a bowl of warm water into the room for washing. Thisbe thanked Amelia, and the maid stood and looked at the princess in surprise. The princess handed the letter to the maid and asked her to deliver it to the crown prince. The letter contained the words that the author of the letter was waiting for his early visit. I sat and smiled as I read Thisbe's letter. She will not allow everything to be the way he wants. Of the arrogant aristocrats who could tell the prince to come, he knew only her, and he came to her, knowing that she could not leave her home, because she is forbidden to leave the palace. And now the prince came to meet Thisbe. The princess said that as he sees it himself, she is in a situation where she cannot leave the residence. Yes, she wants to meet. He has no choice but to come to her himself. The prince asked if the reason he called her here meant that she wanted to accept his proposal, which was done last time. He asked the girl a question. After all, the festival in honor of the founding of the country is in 2 weeks. The saint who was originally supposed to light the holy fire constantly refuses to attend. Therefore, not only the temple, but also the position of the imperial family, which organizes this festival, is difficult. And besides, both she and Killian found themselves in this situation. He is the one who is responsible for the overall preparation of the event. Killian didn't understand what she meant by this. The princess confidently said that she would solve this problem at all costs. Well, as he knows, there is no free help. The princess demanded that the terms of the deal be changed. As payment for her help, she will resolve the issue with a festival instead of breaking off the engagement. The prince sat and was silent. After thinking a little, he said, "Does she really want to prevent a breakup?" The princess said most likely he misunderstood everything. Breaking off the engagement will be necessary. However, she just wants him not to interfere in matters. This is her problem with litter. For Killian, this proposal will not bring losses. And this plan was very cunning. At first glance, Thisbe's offer was presented as if it were more profitable for Killian. Initially, she was clearly asking him. Killian did not expect that the day would come when she would bow her head to him. Now she is in complete control of this deal. The princess was proud of herself. She looked ahead confidently. In that case, and Killian lowered his fist onto the table. Is he now in the place of the one asking? Estelle continues to refuse the lighting ceremony, and therefore the authority of the imperial family fell. And it was true. So we can't just assume here now. They now need to find a reliable way to get her to participate in the event. Thisbe asked not to worry about it. She had one guess why Estelle was acting this way. More likely, there was some reason for this. They said that she didn't even allow guests to visit her. But the princess was sure that she would definitely want to listen to her. And the princess was sure that she would definitely be able to convince her. The princess simply assured of this, and she is the only one who can solve this problem. The prince thought for a second. He asked the girl to tell him her plan. It was warm and sunny outside, and the girl told the prince about her plan. It turns out that she wants to set a trap for him. It's not that difficult, the methods have always been similar. After all, as it turned out, he killed only those who offended and insulted Thisbe. And it was true. The girl raised her snow-white glove and snapped her fingers. The girl said that at the present time, all the attention of society is focused on her and Estelle. Because of what happened at the reception in the imperial palace, a misunderstanding began that they had a bad relationship with their sister, which turned into rumors that Estelle refused the position of saint due to threats. Meanwhile, if Estelle attends the event, what will the criminal do then? Yes, the correct solution is easy to guess. The criminal will immediately send someone to attack her. Due to the large number of people constantly passing and leaving, it is very difficult to identify the culprit. And this will be an opportunity for him that he will not miss to commit a crime. In principle, I understood everything perfectly, and it was a good decision. The prince jumped up from his seat. Was she? And the princess quietly said that Estelle would enter the sanctuary and light the holy fire as planned. In due time, Thisbe will go there too. The prince thought that this idea was not very reasonable. Does she really think this is possible? After all, according to the rules, until now only one person could raise the holy fire. The girl asked if that's why she dragged him into this adventure. His Highness, the Crown Prince, who is in charge of organizing the country's founding festival. The prince was completely unaware of the second person, but it was definitely forbidden. After all, the temple establishes certain rules for lighting the sacred fire. The princess believed that the prince could simply warn them. The prince grabbed his head. He didn't know what to do. Thisbe asked him to remember one thing. She asked him to keep everything related to the sacred fire secret until the festival itself. And then, when the day of the festival comes, he must let him and Estelle into the sanctuary at all costs. Secretly place your people throughout the sacred territory, in case the culprit appears. And when the criminal appears to attack Estelle, as they expected, he will gather soldiers and simply catch the culprit at the crime scene. And now the plan has fully appeared on the surface. No one yet knew her ability to summon a constellation. Even for a criminal, this will be an unexpected fact. And it is with the help of this force that she will catch the culprit. Does he like this option? The prince said yes. After all, if he says something against it, she won't even listen to him. And he agreed to do everything as she said. The girl was pleased that she managed to convince the prince. The plan came into action. All she had to do was get permission from her grandfather to go out. And she turned around. At that moment, her grandfather approached her. He asked the princess why the crown prince came here. The princess was already leaving the mansion to meet her fiance. But she managed to hide it only because it was only short. Now, she cannot secretly leave the mansion and go to the festival. After all, the founding festival of the country is a large-scale event that lasts all day. Therefore, in order to go to such an event with Estelle, first of all, she must gain freedom, with my old friend, and talk to him a little. And Grandpa said it means she keeps her promise, and the girl decided that it was at this moment that she should ask permission to leave the mansion. This was their first normal conversation since that quarrel with their grandfather. And under such circumstances, let alone asking permission to go out, she can't even look him in the eye. The princess was talking with her grandfather, and her eyes were downcast. And she couldn't ask her grandfather for permission. She said that then she would go to her place first. If she didn't have the courage to ask her grandfather for permission to leave the mansion, all that remains is to somehow leave the mansion with the help of the powers of the constellations. This is how she ended up with Estelle. The girl was very surprised to see the princess in front of her. She said that a secret has come. As soon as the girl was about to leave, her grandfather asked her a question. Does she have any plans for the evening? The princess was very surprised and looked at her grandfather. The grandfather invited his granddaughter to have dinner together, and now their dinner has already taken place. There was meat on the plate, as well as vegetables. Princess Everything tried to find an opportunity to talk, but she had absolutely no idea that her grandfather would be the first to ask her to talk. Grandpa put a napkin in his mouth, and he turned. He asked if she planned to visit Estelle. After all, this was precisely the reason why she called the prince here. Grandfather, as always, guessed everything without words. Thisbe tried to calm herself down. She needs to be calm and reasonable now. This is not the time to panic. Grandfather can't possibly know them in terms of the day the country was founded. It needs to be shown that there is nothing like that here. She simply shared her dissatisfaction with the prince. And the princess decided that she would tell her grandfather the truth, inserting the spoon yes. She said that she still does not give up hope of seeing Estelle. But she didn't want to upset her grandfather with this. It will be difficult to notice that he did not want to accuse his granddaughter of anything. Even if everyone around, they will try to dissuade her from her plan. They say that this is impossible and impossible. She never gave up what she wanted. And it is perhaps in this stubbornness that she is very similar to her father. And the princess quickly remembered the image of her father. Grandfather said that her grandmother always grumbled kindly at this immature boy. She always asked him not to do anything dangerous. After all, his safety is not only his problem, and if he needs help, she can always turn to her family. And at that time, he was already tired of the fact that she continued to repeat the same thing to him. Grandfather then could not understand his wife at all. But at the moment when death overtook him, when a wheel came off in a carriage, he very much regretted that he could not tell him how worried he was about him. Grandfather sat and held his only son in his arms, who simply died from his injuries. When grandfather was very depressed by what happened, he looked into the carriage and found his granddaughter there. At that moment, the carriage was overturned as a result of the accident. No one survived in the carriage except the newborn child. The woman was lying and holding a bundle with a child in her arms, and it was a real miracle. Grandpa always thought about that day and the opportunity that God gave him again. He promised himself that he would definitely be able to protect her. But now that his granddaughter Thisbe is in danger, he cannot help her properly. But if it's like now, she continues to stay in the mansion. He could protect her until public opinion calmed down. And Grandpa asked if the princess would give him a chance so that he could protect her this time. The princess was confused. She quickly remembered Roman, but did not remember this moment. This story was not in the novel. For the first time, he steps over himself and opens up to her. The girl still could not forgive her grandfather, but it was alone. Grandfather showed her all his sincerity, and she also wanted to be frank with him. And the princess said that she plans to leave the empire. Grandfather was very surprised to hear this. Why is she planning to leave the empire? Grandfather asked her if she really meant that she wanted to escape the country. The princess said that she'd been thinking about this for a very long time, and the place she wants to escape to is the magic kingdom of She's. At that moment, the girl raised her knife in the air in some unusual way. She said that she wanted to go there to study magic and divine powers. And she continued to hold the knife without touching it. Initially, she wanted to leave without saying a word to anyone. But now she could say it. And now grandfather understood. The reason why she supported registration in the family registry, why she gave up her saint status so easily. It was all about leaving this place. Thisbe honestly admitted to her grandfather that she wanted to leave this place because she could not find her happiness here. Grandfather realized that she had already made her decision, and it will be useless to try to hold her. Grandfather said that she could do as she saw fit. He asked her to feel her heart. The princess looked at her grandfather in surprise. Does this really mean that now she can meet Estelle? The princess was very surprised. Grandfather said that it would be bad if the public knew about it. So he decided to say that it was officially his visit. The princess knew that meeting Estelle would not be so easy. After all, the princess heard the news. Now Estelle does not accept strangers. Grandfather frowned. Did she really already know this? But it is impossible that the young lady, who only recently debuted, could deal with everyone so quickly. And the grandfather said that her uncle, like him, was trying to protect his niece. This is exactly how the grandfather tried to protect his granddaughter by keeping her in the mansion. Count Gillette tries to protect Estelle in the same way. Count Gillette grabbed a piece of paper from the table and quickly crumpled it. He didn't believe that his niece could say such a thing without consulting him. He shouted and asked if she understood what she had done. Estelle listened carefully to her uncle. The uncle ordered the girl to immediately go to the temple and ask for forgiveness for her statement. The girls were very sorry that she did not consult with her uncle. But she had no intention of taking her words back, because she is not a saint, and she is firmly convinced of this. The girl remembered one of the episodes from her life. When she was 10 years old, she got lost in the forest. She walked along the paths for a long time, hoping to find her way home. And when she was completely desperate, she asked, "Is there anyone here who could help her? After all, she is in trouble and cannot find a way out of the forest." The girl realized that she had to return before sunset. Wandering along a mountain path in search of the road back, she came face to face with the monster. He was very scary. He had large fangs and his eyes glowed red. Previously, she had only heard stories about monsters. The only thought that came to her mind was to run away as soon as possible. But for some reason at that moment, her legs did not obey her at all. When she looked back, she saw that her dress was being driven towards the ground by small hooves. It was most likely a monster cub. She was surprised for a moment, but instinctively understood that the monsters were transferring mana to her. There stood not far from her and looked at the girl with big eyes. After thinking a little, I realized that they wanted to help her. They don't intend to offend her at all. And the girl knelt down in front of them. The monster shouted cheerfully, as if calling to follow him. The fear she had when she first encountered these creatures soon disappeared. After walking for some time along the path along which they led her, the girl was able to safely reach the village. And what she saw at the banquet was no illusion. The blue creatures that the princess summoned were glad to see her. Everything was just like the day I first met the monsters. As Thisbe ran to her friend, Estelle followed. She stood and watched after a little time what was happening on the terrace. The girl was so surprised that she covered her mouth with her palm so as not to make a sound. Perhaps the princess simply does not realize her abilities. This will happen until she tells her about it. The princess is the main character of the prophecy, and Estelle should not take her place as a saint. Uncle just hacked and adjusted his glasses. He told her that Princess Thisbe is now a nobody. Now the Duke began to vigorously protect her. This could mean she could become the next Duchess. But this is nothing more than a possibility. After all, such an inglorious lady with a ruined reputation will only cause ridicule from people, and this will be a serious problem for her ascension to the place of Duchess. So the uncle turned to his niece. As a saint, she is simply obliged to restore the lost honor of the Duchy of Calix. But Estelle again tried to object to her uncle. She said she saw everything with her own eyes. Princess Thisbe has truly special powers. Most likely there was some kind of misunderstanding. Uncle hit himself on the forehead with his hand. Even if this really happened, it doesn't change the fact that she is the main character of the prophecy. Don't her abilities prove it? And Estelle thought for a moment. Her statement that Thisbe is a real saint is tantamount to declaring enmity between the imperial family and the temples that declared her a saint. And the uncle asked his niece if she understood what, nominating the princess who was suspected of murder as a saint. She is exposing herself and her uncle. After all, they can later be accused of blasphemy. I didn't say that he couldn't allow the name of the Calix family to be further tarnished. I didn't say until she changed her mind he forbade her to leave the estate. Estelle was very surprised. She wanted to object to her uncle and say something, but someone knocked on the door. The butler appeared on the threshold. He notified the count that a distinguished guest had come to see him. I asked if the temple had sent someone to sort out the ceremony for the founding day, and if this is so, the count ordered the guest to be sent back. It was completely unrepresentative. The estate was granted by the head of the Calix family himself, and he visited their estate in person. As soon as Gillette saw who came to him, he was very surprised. One might say that he was even confused and didn't know what to say. He did not understand why such an important guest had come to him. The head of the Calix family and Thisbe's grandfather said that he needed to talk to the saint. It is said that Lady Estelle cannot fully understand that she is a saint. Apparently, she dreamed at night under the light of the moon that Princess Thisbe was using divine powers. Because his granddaughter is now in no position to freely leave her estate, there was nothing left in my head but to personally come and talk to the girl myself. He asked if the count could take him to a place where he could talk to the lady. As he said, of course, he will now be led into the room by his niece. Count that he will be able to begin to deal with Calix's external affairs much faster than he expected. And now the lady was sitting opposite Calix's head. She had something to tell him. Grandfather Thisbe asked the girl if she hasn't understood anything yet. Estelle didn't understand what he was talking about. And then the grandfather said that this was not the head of the clan, but came to her. If she had come in her real form, her uncle would probably have let her through. Therefore, she borrowed the appearance of her grandfather. Estelle would have been simply dumbfounded. It turns out she saw everything correctly then. Estelle shouted it so loudly that the princess ran up and covered her mouth with her hand. She asked her not to scream. After all, they can be heard. Estelle asked the princess how she could take on the appearance of her grandfather, because it's very difficult to explain. She uses the power of the constellations. It is a power, something like magic or divine. So she summoned the zodiac Gemini and borrowed their ability to create illusions. Although the princess spoke about it as if there was nothing special about it. But even for a person who has no knowledge of magic, this is an amazing ability. Apparently, the saint is not Estelle, but rather the princess, and she became more and more convinced of this. The princess realized that she still saw her on the day of the banquet. She tried to justify herself and say that she didn't do it on purpose. Well, the princess had absolutely no intention of blaming her for anything. Well, she wanted to tell the girl that she understood everything wrong. Besides her, there are many people who are capable of controlling the constellations. You can verify this simply by visiting the temple. And Estelle is the only one who can control monsters. Who else, if not she, could be a saint? I thought about it. She didn't know what to say to the princess now. No matter how much she thought about her abilities and about herself, she did not consider herself the kind of person who was fit to be a saint. Estelle asked if the princess was really saying that there was nothing special about her abilities. Only a few people can use divine power or magic. If this fact is made public, then all this slander will fall from the princess. People like that will believe that she is a true saint. Lady Estelle asked why then she was hiding her abilities. The princess looked at the girls carefully, and Estelle demanded that she tell her the whole truth. Estelle once again asked to tell her the whole truth. The princess thought about it. Apparently she has no other choice. There's nothing you can do about it. And she decided that she would tell Lady Estelle the truth now. In fact, she decided to escape from the empire. Estelle jumped up from her seat. Her words were true. With this level of ability, she will be welcome wherever she goes. It is possible that she will be put in the place of a saint again. But if her abilities are revealed, the empire will not let her go so easily. After all, it is obvious that the temple and the imperial family will try to take advantage of it. That's why the princess decided to leave here. She is tired of a life in which she is only used. Until now, she thought that the princess simply did not realize her abilities, and therefore she was unfairly removed from her position as a saint. And now I understand everything. The princess knows her abilities better than anyone else. And yet Lady Estelle still could not understand one thing. Is she worthy of the position I am a saint? After all, this entails great responsibility. After all, even the princess who had gained her reputation as a saint a long time ago was removed from this place in just a moment. And in such a place she is not outstanding at all. Lady Estelle was very scared. The princess said that the place may not be suitable for the person, and that is not the most important thing. The princess walked over and took Estelle's hands in hers. She told the girl that she was already a saint. The princess said that she watched her become a great saint, capable of confidently facing the disaster that befell the continent. Something who did not say this fact will not change. The princess said that she had great faith in Estelle. The girls appeared before our eyes. Perhaps all this time she just wanted to escape. Therefore, I firmly believe that the princess was a saint. She didn't want to become the saint of the prophecy, attracting everyone's attention. The body will live its former life. And suddenly, Lady Estelle said that the princess was right. We cannot continue to avoid the facts. And she said she won't run away again, because that day she firmly decided that she would be on the side of the princess no matter what. And she is ready to be at the founding festival. She will go to the sanctuary, receive baptism, and officially become a saint of the empire. The princess agreed with her, but before that, the princess would like to tell her about her plan. He approaches the doors and knocks on them. She had not visited them for a long time. She was happily greeted by her friend Mahi. He called her Lady Constellation. The girl asked her friend to understand her. During this time, she could not free herself from the supervision of her family. But the Mahi did not understand what to do when one of the influential people of the guild was absent for so long, and it was unknown when he would return. The princess said that this is why it is difficult to meet influential people, because they are influential. The princess thanked her friend for helping her when she had been away for so long. I looked at myself and thought, he confidently said, who else but him should be entrusted with such work? And he asked the princess if she knew how surprised he was when he heard the news. She visited Lady Estelle to ask for help. Did she really tell the girl about her plan? The princess said that so that she could become bait, Estelle was strongly drawn into the plan to capture the criminal, and she had to know everything. A few hours ago, Estelle said, or is it becoming bait for the sake of catching a criminal? Estelle thought it was reckless. The princess knew that these were big risks, and she is not responsible for the lady's safety, and it's really reckless. But Estelle said that compared to what the princess would do, this was nothing. At least she didn't want to be a hindrance to her. And Estelle asked the princess to focus only on catching the criminal, and she will be responsible for her own safety. When she first arrived in the capital, she thought she was just a little chicken. Who knew she had such thoughts in her head, said it wasn't that surprising. If everything had been the same as before, she would never have decided to tell her plan. The princess would rather do everything on her own. But if you think about it, in the past, the princess would have really taken charge of everything, because she couldn't fully trust other people. The princess wondered if she really began to trust the outsiders more. Well, don't let your guard down just because things have been going well lately. Now she needs to concentrate more. And you should focus on matters that need to be addressed right now. And the girl asked the Mahalan if he found out what she asked him for. Mahi smiled. Although it was only for cover, he is the head of the Zodiac Guild. There was just over a week left until the founding festival, and Mahi collected all the useful information. He cut out photographs and placed them all on the board. He drew a red line in the sequence of how all events would occur, and the young man came to the conclusion that the most problematic at the festival would be none other than Lord Lunay. Until they catch the criminal, no matter how hard they try, they will not be able to stop the attempt on his life. And Mahi said that the man he met at the banquet disappeared after that time, but hired killers followed him every day. Of course, the guild eliminates the killers instead. Well, this guy doesn't notice anything at all and only indulges in women. Observation is also hard work. After all, he already has a fiance. Through the efforts of the princess, Mahi is now busy protecting and monitoring him. The princess asked not to worry because today it will all end. Although this is a sore subject for her, the first thing she will do is send him away from here. And the princess asked the cold mind where the murders had taken place at the moment. I started listing. They occurred in Glossa, Vilnius, Helios, and... that is, all these places had something in common. They looked at the map and it was incredible. All these crimes were committed in the center of the capital. It looks like the criminal is aiming to publicize the crime. Therefore, if Lord Lunet leaves the capital, the criminal will not be able to achieve his goal. Well, how can they expel him from the capital? Mahi was just sure that he would cover up with his father. Therefore, the princess gave her friend the task of watching the Lord. Lord Lunet is a man who would be much gossiped about for his behavior. Until now, Mark Graff is behind all the rumors about him. But what if they compromise him at an important event? And Mahi snapped his fingers. He meant a party. And this party of Duchess Ferencia. This party is held every year by those who are going to get married. There to greet the Duchess and ask for advice. According to observations, Lord is also going to attend the party. This way he will expose himself and won't suspect them. The princess said she thought he was overestimating his father's status. The Duchess's position is a matter of fact, and in secular society she is so strong that she organizes such a large-scale party. And if the deeds of Lord Lunay are revealed there, not even Mark Graff can protect him, and he will no longer be able to attend public events. They wanted to let him know that he couldn't hide behind his father forever. Mahi looked carefully into the princess's eyes. He finally had the desire to work. And then the day came when... the countess was having a party. She is glad that today at this party there are young couples who have promised to love each other. At the upcoming Foundation Day celebration, the countess said that God would bless them. And then the clink of a glass was heard in the hall. The guests sang mostly red wine. At this festival, the princess was with her fiance. She thanked Sora for coming here with her. The young man said that he was very sorry that he could not spend the whole day with her. It was very annoying, but he had things to do that he couldn't figure out. Sora will not be able to escort the princess back to the mansion. The princess was stunned. Did she call him too suddenly? But if you think about it this way, this is their first meeting with the groom since that day. Until now, she had treated him like a groom chosen for him by his family. But now she heard what Sora thought about him. The princess was more nervous that day than usual. And suddenly someone greeted the princess. The princess was very surprised. Standing before her was Count Jeff himself. Sora said that this was the first time he had seen this gentleman, and he asked his bride if this was her friend. The princess was happy, and she said that this was her close friend Count Jeff, and next to him was his fiancée Lady Cordelier, and it was they who invited their named evening. The Count bowed to the Duke as a sign of respect. He said that he had heard a lot about the princess's litter, and the princess asked if he didn't say that he had a conversation with her. The princess warned him not to make unnecessary jokes. Machion deliberately pretended to be a count. This was his role today. Mahi asked if the princess really wanted him to attend the party too. She said that creating a fake identity for him would not be difficult. Perhaps I didn't think about it because I see his precious face every day. But as the head of the Zodiac Information Guild, it's difficult for him to appear at such a big event. This means telling the whole world that he is the leader of the guild. Why doesn't he just infiltrate the event on his own like he does as usual? The princess said that in this case, simply entering the banquet is not enough. She needs an assistant nearby who can create the situation that she plans. And Mahi suggested that maybe she would ask another lady or a friend. Well, the princess said that she doesn't have such people. She suggested one of the girls, but she apologized and refused. She didn't want to be involved in something shady. Everything was right. It was necessary to look for some other way out. And Mahi said that even if the entire imperial square was plastered with leaflets with his face on it, he would help her. And if the problem he just mentioned is the only one, then he has nothing to worry about. She has already found someone who will help them. When he saw who appeared with the lady in the constellation of twins, he almost stumbled in surprise. After all, Gemini could change the appearance of the caster. They had to resort to tricks. Mahi told the princess to look aside. There was a tart that the princess was looking for. The princess looked carefully in that direction. Lord Lunette's bride was Princess Marcia and Ivrea. Although she is the eldest daughter of the Duke, when her family's fortunes declined and she became engaged to the son of the influential Marx, Count Lunetta. And at that moment, Mafia said that it seemed they had been noticed too. And a man quickly approached the couple. He ran up and said, "Isn't this the same killer?" He meant Thisbe. Despite how she looks in the eyes of society, the name of the evening still dares to proudly declare itself. And he told her to thank the reputation of her fiance, the Duke of Salvatore. Sora was offended. The princess made a gesture with her hand. Everything was fine, and she asked to leave him. Thisbe said it was very strange. She didn't expect to hear something like that from Lord No. He is the one who can say the least about this. I asked what she meant. Thisbe stated that the event was a party for engaged couples. And this is not the right place for a man whose partners change every day. The Count quickly lowered her eyes and said that he sincerely did not understand what she was talking about. Is it really a noble princess to all this gossip that is going around? Thisbe that she's also a victim of gossip, so she tries to believe only what she sees personally. In this case, she not only believes gossip, because now it was Lord Lunette who once proposed to her. The Lord began to shake with anger. He didn't expect to hear this. The Lord is mooning with his inferiority complex regarding the sore. Count Jeff shouted, "Is this really true?" The princess told the Count that he very rarely attends social events, and perhaps he did not know this. And importantly, Lord Lunetta also had a bride at that time, but he received a refusal from the princess, so this event was not made public. Sora joined the conversation. It was obvious that after that, he and the Lord had a serious conversation. Sora was very angry. "Lord Maxim, isn't this all already in the past? His princess said they had to go now. After all, there are a lot of extra eyes here." The princess said that her fiancé made the princess uncomfortable, and she personally apologized for him. Lord, on the contrary, believed that it was he who deserved an apology. There's no good in making a big fuss here. And didn't his father tell him the same thing? This is an important event, so the Lord's father ordered it to be carried out without any problems. And it was true. He just needed to be patient for a while and marry this woman and finally become a duke. Lord said that since his fiancé asked, he will back down this time. He turned sharply and was about to leave, but he said he couldn't keep his head up forever. His patience does not last forever. He made this phrase literal. The princess followed him carefully with her gaze. Very soon, someone called out. It was a brunette with a red headdress. The Lord saw this woman and froze. Will his secret really be revealed before everyone's eyes? The girl walked to the Lord and smiled dazzlingly. It was clear that she was glad to see him here. But the Lord saw the girl on the contrary and was confused. At that moment, he quickly grabbed this girl's hand and dragged her along with him. The bride who accompanied the Count was very surprised. The princess did not think that the groom was capable of bringing his mistress to the evening. The princess knew that the Lord was a fool, but she did not expect that he would abandon his bride so quickly. This only increases his distrust of himself. All these events took place in front of the entire secular society. At this time, someone called out to the princess. The princess told the three of them to follow Lord Lunette. If he leaves so easily, a big scandal could break out. You need to follow him and try them on. Sora asked what about the princess then? And the princess said that she would follow Princess Marcia, and he will try to calm her down and smooth out the misunderstanding. Of course, the princess would like to follow the Lord of the Moon, but she knew firsthand what it was like to be alone and in a sparkling ballroom. And the princess quickly followed the bride and the Lord. The girl walked to the sofa and sat down. She held herself proudly and tried not to show her feelings. Thisbe came closer to the princess. The girl was upset. She said that they were both princesses, but one of them became a laughing stock. Did Thisbe really come to laugh at her? Thisbe said that everything was completely wrong. She herself is accused of murder, so it is not in her position to mock others. The Lord's bride said that if she only came to console her, she would refuse. Thisbe said that she was taught, and she quickly handed the girl the bow. She said helping those in need is a noble trait. Thisbe noticed that the girl did not seem to have a handkerchief with her to wipe away her tears. The princess quickly took the handkerchief and wiped away her tears. She thanked him. Her feelings were now so confused that she said something absurd. Thisbe said that in such a situation, this is a completely natural reaction and there is nothing wrong with it. The girl continued her conversation. She thought that Lord Lunette would at least take care to maintain his nobility in front of everyone, but she didn't really interfere in his life. This woman? Lord Lunette brought her to the earldom. The girl saw her coming to him, and he asked her why she came here. He called her name Camilla. The girl said that she could hear everything so perfectly why he was screaming. She should rather ask him about it. And the girl showed the Lord an invitation, in which it was said that he invited Camilla to his place. The Lord snatched the invitation from the girl's hands and quickly began to read it, and it was definitely a real invitation. Was someone targeting him to frame him? But Camilla didn't care. She told him she was always bored with that woman. Now that other people have become aware of them, their relationship can become... And the girl didn't finish. The Count quickly interrupted her. He told her that she seemed very mistaken. After all, what kind of serious relationship can he have with her? She's a commoner. Camilla looked at the Lord and smiled. Does he really think everything is okay? If she now returns to the banquet hall and tells everyone about their relationship, there will be very big troubles. The Lord was simply furious. He asked the girl to remember who she was threatening. At that moment, the girl touched her face, and he quickly threw her hand away with a sharp gesture. At this moment, the girl's heel suddenly turned. He stood and his face changed. Surprise and fear could be seen on his face. At this time, Mahi was already looking for him, could have gotten away so quickly. And why do all the scum have such fast legs? And just when the Mahi thought they were using their abilities, he saw Sora standing nearby. If he used his abilities, he would find the Lord in an instant. And Mahi realized that something bad might happen in the near future. Still, intuition is surprisingly correct. And he quickly pointed his finger in the other direction. He decided to go look there. Although, since the Duke of Mahi was nearby, there was nothing left to do but use his abilities. And, as soon as he wanted to use his abilities, Sora quickly grabbed his hand. He told him that he's definitely... And at that moment, Sora quickly released the young man's hand. He said they were one step too late. Because I was nearby and I heard some sounds. The princess came over to see why it was so noisy here. Lord Lunette sat on the ground. He is shaking with fear and said that it was an accident. He just accidentally pushed her slightly. Ours grabbed my head and screamed that he didn't want to do this. The princess turned around and looked at the Lord. Did he really push? And at this time, the princess shouted to everyone to wait and let her pass immediately. She ran up and looked carefully at this girl. The girl was floating face down in the water. She was already dead. Next to her were her shoes. And so the doctors set the time of death. This happened at 20:34:22 seconds. The girl's body was covered with a sheet. Camilla La Torres unfortunately passed away. Lord Lunette sat over her and couldn't believe it. At this moment, Duchess Ferentia approached Lord Lunette. She said she didn't need an explanation of how it happened. She said the letter was found near the girl's body, and she asked the City of the Moon whether this note was familiar to him. The Lord was simply shocked. This is an invitation to a party. The Countess said that she did not remember inviting her to a dinner party. This means that this invitation is fake. But the sender of the invitation is Lord Lunette. Lord Lunette was also indignant. He didn't remember sending such a letter. And at that moment, the Lord revealed that this must be a trick of Princess Thisbe to slander him. The princess was very surprised and looked at the Lord with surprise. Sora tried to protect the princess and asked if there was evidence of this. After all, when the Lord ran out, abandoning his bride, it was Princess Thisbe who became worried about Lady Marcia, who was left alone, and went after her. If the princess is accused only based on personal suspicions, then he will pay dearly for it. And at that moment, Sora gently hugged the princess by the shoulder. The cathedral lover was given this, which was only supposed to report his infidelity and completely unexpectedly died, turning the situation around. But there are other variables here too. At that moment, the bride approached them. She said that everything the Duke said was true. The princess had been with her the whole time before the incident happened. Because there are people here who believe, if she goes, then their whole family will go too. Doesn't she want to revive her broken family? But the princess said no. She told the Lord no, that it was all over between them. The Lord was very surprised to hear such a statement. Does she really think she'll be okay after this? Without the support of his family, she will quickly end up on the street. And the Duke seems to be going to make the Lord look like a criminal. He asked Sora if he himself had proof. This woman fell by pure accident. And at that moment, someone from the crowd said that there was evidence. The Lord's face changed and changed. One girl assured that she saw everything that happened. She was walking nearby and saw something strange. A girl's shoe was floating in the pond. A few seconds later, she heard someone asking for help. And at that moment, the girl saw the scene of the Count of the Moon holding the hand of Camilla hanging from the balcony. He asked her to be silent and said that he would wake her up now. But if you think about it, if this woman falls now, no one will tell, but his affair. The girl realized that she was not going to save her. She asked to get her out quickly. She said that she was too harsh just now, and he's not going to tell anyone anything about him anymore. But this all happened too far from the girl. She couldn't hear what exactly they were talking about, but a few more seconds and trouble could happen. The girl looked at these two with a surprised look, and then their hands separated. The Lord laughed cheerfully and said that he would still have to marry that woman. He told Camellia that she knew for sure that he would never have sent her an invitation. And he said that now she can understand what happens when you come with a fake invitation. At that moment, the girl fell into the pool. The girl who witnessed what happened did not hear exactly what they were saying. Well, she clearly saw how the girl grabbed her and left a wound on her hand. At that moment, the Lord was grabbed to conduct an inspection. They quickly turned his hand, on which everything was true, as the witness of the incident said. He had a wound on his hand. The Countess grabbed her head. She asked the officers to arrest Lord Lunet. Thisbe walked up to the constellations and said that they had done a great job. Then the Mahi could already return. The princess asked if Mahi was already returning. He said that yes, preparations for the lady's escape were still in progress, and he needs to find out about one case as quickly as possible. Until now, he had not had any suspicions, because he only knew about him according to the lady's words. But then he felt something was wrong. Duke Salvatore is a dangerous type of person, too recovered from the shock of Killian's betrayal. Therefore, he did not want to confuse her with unclear assumptions now. He had no other choice but to collect information personally. At this time, someone called out to the princess. The princess turned and saw Sora in front of her. He saw that she was here, and all this time he was looking for where she had gone. The princess said that there are too many people near the pond now, so for now it is better for them to bypass this place. They met after a long time, but for some reason their meetings always end like this, no matter where they are. Sora said it wasn't her fault, therefore he asked not to blame herself. Then the Duke asked if the princess remembered their recent promise. He repeated once again that they agreed that when the situation improves, she could then reconsider their relationship. He promised her that he would make sure that no one could humiliate her again. He was also ready to make sure that she did not get hurt and had fun for her own pleasure. To do this, she only needs to say one word. And this is one word: I want. Was it because she relaxed after a troubled day, or because his words were as sweet as a dream? Well, the quiet voice inside the princess asked her, can she just dream once? She ended up saying something she shouldn't have said that day, and I wanted this word. Sora was very surprised to hear this word. He had a very surprised look. He assured the princess that he would definitely do this, and he hugged her tightly with both hands. Even if it means turning everything into hell except her side, he will definitely do it. He continued to hug the princess and look at him with a mutually mysterious gaze. The assistant asked what he was going to do with Lord Lunet now. Sora said, even if he leaves him like this, he will bury himself. Therefore, there is no need to worry about this at all. In addition, the attention of all reporters is already focused on Thisbe. Rather, they need to eliminate the culprit behind all these threats. The assistant asked if they really needed to eliminate Estelle. The girl said that she would still take part in the festival, Then at first he can afford to give up a place that another person has worked hard to earn, and then accept it with the same ease. Well then, it will be better. After all, then Sora won't have to change his plans. And then the carriage stopped. Sora was greeted by a young man. He said that he had been waiting for him for a long time, and he is ready to take him to the place of negotiations. The man had long black hair. And then the day of the festival arrived. Everyone gathered in the temple. Estelle looked out of the curtains and realized that apparently it would soon be their turn to go out. The girl was very worried. She asked Thisbe whether the culprit she told would really come here. Well, the princess asked her not to worry. That's what she's here for. At the top of the sanctuary, on the sacred mountain, a torch lights up. The inhabitants of the empire gather in the palace. From aristocrats to high-ranking officials of the empire, they gather to watch this spectacle from the highest hall of the palace. Only the priests who will conduct the ritual remain in the light itself, or are still there. So this is the perfect scene to catch the criminal. Despite this sanctuary, there are two saints. The princess was able to hide until this moment thanks to her abilities. But what if the priests discover them and try to drive the princess out? Princess Thisbe asked not to worry. She has a backup plan for this. And she remembered the prince. She was very happy that Lady Iller would be performing the ceremony at the bottom. The reason Lady didn't want to attend in the first place was because of Princess Calix's bullying. Come to think of it, the princess won't be attending the ceremony. After all, now the princess, angry, closed all the curtains in the mansion. Most likely she just locked herself in her room. At this time, the girls' conversation was interrupted by Sora. He said they were having so much fun talking. And he asked one of the girls if she could tell him what interesting things they discussed. He would really like to know about this too. The girl smiled and said that naturally she would tell. They were talking about the festival of founding an empire. One of the men said that a new saint would perform the ceremony. Sorry, they can't even say confidently about the topic of their conversation to your face. And it was suspicious. But soon it will end, because soon there will be only one saint in the empire. And everyone began to quickly immediately discuss this news. Is this really true? Everyone just heard this news. And then someone grabbed the man by the shoulder. Is Princess Calix really in the sanctuary? Is the man sure of what he just said? Sora stood in front of the young man. He asked the young man again if he was sure that Thisbe was in the sanctuary. I said he was completely sure. It was the princess there. Squire did not expect such an answer. This is a clear disrespect for the temple. How can you make a decision on such an important issue without consulting the priests at all? After all, the decision was made by the prince himself. He knew this would happen, but it's still a headache. For him, just notifying him is enough. However, if through this he can attract Thisbe to his side, it will not be an unprofitable business. The priest asked the prince if he had almost forgotten, but he fucking told them not to forget that the man in front of them was the future emperor of this country. One of the men asked His Highness to excuse them for the rudeness of the servants, who raised their voices at him. However, the sanctuary is managed by the temple, and he of his own free will let the princess in there. How despite such actions, he will be able to maintain friendly relations with the temple. The princess isn't a saint or anything like that anymore? Fine, because of their illusions, they make someone a saint at will, or take away the title of saint. But after everything is over, it's better for them to thank her themselves. It was thanks to the princess that Lady Estelle agreed to perform the ritual for the founding festival. The priest did not understand how it was, and the prince asked if they didn't want to force Estelle to do this. He simply allowed the only person with whom Estelle agreed to cooperate. And this person is Princess Calix. Otherwise, why would he allow the princess to enter the sanctuary? And as I already said, the duty of the temple is to manage the sanctuary. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it depends on the temple. And if it becomes known that the priests responsible for this could not convince one saint, what will people think about this? And so, out of concern for their face, he deliberately took the blame upon himself for enduring resistance from the court. But they intended to make a fuss here.